Chapter 743. On the precipice, under the fiery red sky, numerous sword auras wreaked havoc. The whistling wind caused numerous enormous black cracks to appear in the space. The entire precipice appeared extremely berserk. The sword auras and the ringing of bells resounded incessantly. The thunderous vibrations, accompanied by unparalleled sword chi, came and went again and again. It was unknown how many times they had come and gone. The 8 flaming drums resounded with a chaotic melody, and flames surged out one after another. Yin Nuoxing brandished 8 long swords with both hands, and his body was surrounded by purple-red flames. Billowing waves of fire would surge with every swing of his sword. He had forgotten how many times he had swung his sword, and only closed his eyes to feel all of this. His 2 swords continued to dance, and then suddenly turn around to grab the long sword behind him as if he was exchanging dance tunes. He danced wildly in the space behind him, and then switched swords in an instant. There was no pause in the connection between the swords. If there were outsiders here, they would probably only see after-images that could not be removed, and the 8 long sword were brandished. It was as if the people involved had already fallen into a dance tune, and the accompanying melody was the incessant ringing of the bell and the brushing of the sword chi. Golden energy continued to emanate from his body. Yin Nuoxing only focused on swinging his sword again and again, sending out the reflected sword rays once again. Each sword strike was more powerful than the previous one. The bell and drum had also changed from a small swaying to a constant swaying. On this cliff, there were only 2 sounds, the sound of the sword and the sound of the bell. 10,000 transformations, sword body. A soft chant suddenly rang out from the violent sound waves. As the sound rang out, a few shadows suddenly appeared on the dancing Yin Nuoxing's body and adhered to him. As soon as those shadows appeared, they grabbed the 6 long swords behind him and followed Yin Nuoxing's every swing, brandishing the 6 long swords. As the 8 sword chi were reflected at once, Yin Nuoxing's arm trembled. He took a deep breath and crossed his 2 swords in front of him. When he heard the thunder-like ringing of the bell, he suddenly opened his eyes and saw the sword chi rushing towards him like waves. His expression suddenly froze as he opened his 2 swords and shouted, "Sword Shadow, Lotus Flower." As the shout rang out, Yin Nuoxing and the 2 shadows suddenly brandished the long swords in their hands. Sword chi shot out in all directions as though they were free. Clang, 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 dong, clang, clang. The man and the 2 shadows danced wildly. The countless sword chi seemed to have condensed into 3 huge sword chi lotuses that surged out in all directions. The densely packed sword chi not only covered the 8 sword chi that had counterattacked, but also drowned the 8 drums. Numerous buzzing sounds were emitted as the sword chi continued to strike. The densely packed sword chi caused the drums to be unable to reflect the sword chi in time, and they were drowned by wave after wave of sword chi. Dong, dong, dong. The rapid ringing of the bell rang out continuously as Yin Nuoxing brandished his sword faster and faster. Light particles pervaded his entire body as his entire body emitted a substantial divine golden light, making him look as ferocious as a war god. Why hasn't it rung yet? As Yin Nuoxing brandished his sword, he was incomparably shocked. The power reflected by the 8 drums was already at the level of a divine sun. Logically speaking, it should have rung by now. However, he didn't dare to stop his brandishing hands. Once he did, the 8 sword chi would explode back with a tremendous force. Most importantly, his previous efforts would be rendered useless. Flame, flame. Yin Nuoxing murmured these 2 words as the purple-red flames became increasingly turbulent. Furthermore, the surging sword chi contained a dense divine flame. The sword chi that filled the sky looked as though there was a person standing in a sea of fire and continuously brandishing his sword. On the mountaintop outside the cloud fire secret territory, Xian, Yi Shi, and the other 3 stood quietly. The 4 of them quietly closed their eyes to Mei Mao and didn't think about anything. Lu Feng, on the other hand, was pacing back and forth anxiously. He turned his head to look in the direction of the metal chain and sighed. He then looked at the four of them and was about to say something. Suddenly, the sound of wind breaking came from the horizon, causing him to be stunned. Chi! The sound was like thunder, carrying with it the power of rolling thunder. It resounded in the sky and startled many students on the mountaintop. They hurriedly stood up and looked at the horizon in the distance. There, silver-blue thunder light bloomed, as though a thunder dragon was riding a thundercloud dragon. Not long after, a figure fell on a mountaintop with a heavenly thunder. The vast momentum shook the ground into pieces. The person who came was a burly man with a stocky back and a bare waist. His hair shone with a resolute luster like steel. His face was as dark as the sky before a storm. What was even more frightening was his silver-blue eyes that flickered with thunderlight. Just looking at them would cause one's eyes to hurt. He's here, this annoying guy. Seeing the person who came, Lu Feng frowned slightly and sighed in his heart. He didn't expect this person to come so quickly. The person landed on a mountaintop and casually looked at the students with disdain, causing them to feel an irresistible pressure. No one dared to look at him directly. Xian and the other three didn't feel anything. Among the four of them, only she wasn't a god. However, with the five elements body, she wasn't afraid of the pressure of a god. Yang Hua, what are you doing here? Lu Feng sighed as he slowly walked in front of the large man and asked. The person called Yang Hua nodded slightly when he saw Lu Feng. Then, he looked at the metal chain and said, That boy, he went in? Hearing this, Lu Feng frowned slightly and said, Yang Hua, be more respectful. That's the god's son, not some boy. Hey, old Lu, you and I have known each other for so many years. Don't you know what kind of person I am? Hearing this, Yang Hua sneered and replied, Who cares if he's the chosen god's son? Although I'm loyal to the 9 divine halls, it doesn't mean that I'll definitely recognize him. I only look at strength. If he's strong enough, I'll naturally respect him as young master. If he's not strong enough, then forget it. Moreover, that brat's reputation wasn't that good a few years ago. Lu Feng's expression froze, and his face darkened. If someone else had said this, he would have turned hostile. However, he knew Yang Hua's personality, so he held back. Yang Hua smacked his lips and said, You also know that there are many people in the 9 gods temple who have such doubts. Although the Great Elder and the other higher-ups don't have any opinions about that boy, and are even very satisfied with him, other than the Great Elder and the others have a lot of opinions. How about I give him a chance to prove himself? You, a divine realm deity, have the nerve to make things difficult for the godson. He's just a demon-ranked second seal. Lu Feng frowned. Old man, you're confused. In the divine world, no one who knows Yin Nuashing will treat him as a demon rank. The Great Elder and the others will only treat him as a deity expert. Yang Hua sneered. But Lu Feng was also stunned and bitterly smiled. Indeed, he couldn't use the eyes of a demon rank to look at the Yin Nuo planet. Although he was indeed only a demon rank, the damage he could cause was not something a demon rank could compare to. Even so, I still don't. Before Lu Feng could finish his words, he was stunned. In the distance, a melodious and loud sound of a bell rang slowly and spread across the entire area. It was like a huge bell ringing in everyone's hearts. The vast sound of the bell reverberated in the void, startling the students and elders. They all raised their heads and looked into the cloud fire mystery land. Their eyes were filled with uncertainty. Did the sound of the bell and drum come from the cloud fire mystery land? Dong! The heavenly sound of the bell rang again, stirring everyone's hearts and making them want to sit down and play a tune. This time, the sound of the bell was even louder and spread across the entire Flamingly College. Even the students who were fighting in the distance stopped in shock. Dong! With the third sound of the bell and drum, Lu Feng's expression changed slightly. The 3 sounds were different. In other words, this was the result of 3 bells ringing at the same time. As the number of sounds changed, the rhythm would also change. Clang! The 4th sound of the bell and drum was like the clashing of spears and horses. It reverberated across the entire flamingly college. The grand rhythm pierced everyone's eardrums and caused illusions to appear in their minds. It was as though they were looking at a battlefield where countless weapons were clashing before their eyes. When the fifth sound rang out, Yang Hua was also slightly taken aback. He looked at the cloud fire mystery land with a grave expression. 5 bells ringing at the same time. This had probably not happened in 1,000 years. Yishi slowly opened her eyes. The sound of the bell contained a power that she was most familiar with. This melody contained the power of the stars. Among all the people she knew, only one person could do it. Its brother Nuo. Hearing this, Xian and the rest lifted Mei Mao and looked at the cloud fire mystery land. Their jade-like hands clenched slightly. The endless sound of the bell and drum seemed to cause the heavens and earth to tremble. The fire elements in the heavens and earth played along. The entire flamingly college quieted down, leaving only the sound of the bell and drum. The most shocked people were Nie Shuang and the rest, who had watched Yin Nuoxing enter. They listened to the grand music in front of them, and their eyes were filled with disbelief. If it was an ordinary person, one sound would be enough to pass. But at this moment, the 7th sound had been played. This made them certain that it was Yin Nuoxing who had caused the commotion. 8 drums ringing at the same time. The momentum is overwhelming and the power is immense. It will probably be difficult to play the last sound. Lu Feng sighed softly. This time, the bell chimes were exactly the same as the previous one. Evidently, that person had failed to make all 8 bells chime in unison. However, to be able to make all 7 bells chime in unison was already an impressive feat, even in the history of the Blazingly Academy. There weren't many who could achieve this feat at this moment. On the cliff, streaks of sword chi were raging. Although they were still violent, they were directed and had a certain rhythm as they bombarded the 8 drums. 7 of them resonated. Only the last drum remained silent. Sword chi, no flames. The waves of fire are stacked one after another. When the last sound of the bell rings, the momentum will soar into the sky. It is comparable to the full force attack of a god underworld expert. At this time, Yin Nuoxing no longer had any movements of swinging his sword. The sea of fire beside him constantly swept out rolling waves of fire, hitting the 7 drums. As for him, he was holding a huge star sword, facing the last drum that did not ring. Between one person and 7 drums, a strange balance was maintained. The waves of fire and the swaying of the drums were all connected as one. If the last sound was to be played, it had to be integrated into this unique melody. Waves upon waves, the 7 drums are the catalyst. The last drum is the release point. Yin Nuoxing muttered in his heart. Then, he took a deep breath, and the starry sword was surrounded by rolling flames. With a loud shout, Yin Nuoxing violently slashed out with his sword. The sword chi of the flame turned into a brilliant crescent light. In the blink of an eye, it hit the last drum. Dong! The distant sound of the 8th rhythm slowly spread throughout the entire flamingly college. Countless people raised their heads in shock. They did not know who had made all 8 drums ring at the same time. Chapter 744. On the precipice, as the 8th bell rang out, the flames and sword chi that filled the sky disappeared. The 8 drums also slowly returned to their calm state. The bell stopped ringing, and Yin Nuoxing laid on the ground, gasping for breath. Other than the 10 feet around him, the other parts of the precipice had been shattered into pieces. Phew! What's the 5th stage? After gasping for breath for a while, Yin Nuoxing stood up and rubbed his hands that were almost broken. His vision flashed, and the 5 drums in front of him disappeared. The precipice also faded away. Then, Yin Nuoxing saw that he had appeared on top of a mountain that was spewing flames. On the charred ground, there were countless fiery red ravines that looked like flowing flames. From time to time, there would be pillars of fire that shot up a few meters high. The scalding sensation that came from under his feet made Yin Nuoxing lower his head. Then, he saw the hellish scene and was slightly stunned. He looked around and could only see the mountain that was spewing flames. There was nothing else, and there were no hints. Boom! The pillars of flames that erupted rose 100 meters into the air. Lava and scalding rocks were sprayed out, and the sparks landed on Yun Nuoxing's body, making him feel slightly hot. There's nothing. After walking around a few times, he still couldn't see anything. The sky was covered by thick gray clouds, and the ground below his feet was on fire. His evil spirit eye slowly opened, and Yun Nuoxing walked around again. His heart trembled, and he couldn't help but smile. He lowered his head and saw a huge array on the burning ground. Squatting down and looking at the huge array, Yun Nuoxing couldn't help but reach out to touch it. He was slightly shocked. An array that's completely made of fire elemental energy? The elemental energy in an array is usually used to support it. Weave arrays not only have elemental energy, but also immortal chi, demonic chi, and divine energy. The various elemental energies have to be balanced. I've never seen an array that's purely made of elemental energy, and there's only one type of elemental energy. Yun Nuoxing looked at this huge formation in surprise. This was not a complete formation. Only a third of the formation eye of the energy matrix had been woven out. This made him have a guess in his heart. Could it be that the formation is going to be completed? After pondering for a while, Yun Nuoxing felt very distressed. She found a place where the flames wouldn't erupt and sat down cross-legged. She waved her hands in front of her, and several large formations appeared in front of her. The azure light illuminated Yun Nuoxing's solemn and beautiful face. Yun Nuoxing felt a little vexed as she looked at the azure array in front of her. She waved her hand and dismissed it. Then, she concentrated and spread out her right hand. Wisps of light purple flames rose from her palm. She focused and took a deep breath after a moment. Then, she waved her hand, and the array that had just dissipated condensed again. However, the color was not pure azure, but a third of it was light purple. It's not that easy. Yun Nuoxing laughed bitterly when he saw that there was only a third of the flame energy left. It was indeed not as easy to condense as he thought. The energy lines of the formation were filled with the energy of the will of the elements. The various elemental energies existed in a balance. It was difficult to break this balance by only using fire elemental energy to weave the formation. After pondering for a long time, Yun Nuoxing casually dismissed the formation and tried again. When a light purple fire elemental energy occupied almost half of the formation, it was difficult to move, which made her feel very depressed. I feel that if the fire elemental energy reaches half of the formation, I won't be able to maintain the formation. Yun Nuoxing scratched her head in distress and sighed. Then she muttered, "Then I'll take it slow, one stroke at a time, right?" Thinking of this, she immediately got to work. A wisp of purple night flame burned on her fingertips, and she slowly drew 2 energy matrix lines in the air. When she finished drawing, she even used her evil spirit eye to confirm that it was indeed all fire elemental energy. Only then did she complete the energy matrix lines and outline the core of the formation. Bang! Just as she finished drawing the core of the formation, before she could start drawing the other parts of the formation exploded into a cloud of energy, smoke with a bang. The fire elemental energy rampaged uncontrollably and finally dissipated into nothingness. Looking at the formation that was destroyed before it was even born, Yun Nuoxing's cheeks trembled. She crossed her arms and slowly fell into deep thought. In her mind, pieces of light purple formation appeared from nothing and slowly formed one stroke at a time. Thousands of formations were slowly being woven. The same core showed that this should be the same formation. Furthermore, the patterns weren't complicated and were only of the mundane level. It was equivalent to a beginner training formation. However, even these simple formations couldn't be formed when they were being woven. Every time the core of the formation was woven, the formation would automatically disintegrate. Even if she were to weave the core of the formation first, and then the matrix lines, or even if she didn't follow the steps, as long as she reached half of the formation limit and continued weaving, the formation would be destroyed. After an unknown amount of time, the thousands of formations in her mind were broken and rewoven, and then broken again. This repeated countless times. With Yun Nuoxing's personality, she gradually became impatient. She felt that she hadn't grasped the essence of the formation, but she didn't know where the problem was. She shifted her gaze and looked at the half-formed formation underground. The formation was thousands of feet in size. The energy matrix lines and the core of the formation had been completely woven. Even a part of the formation had been woven. It was completely formed from fire elemental energy. More than half of it was fire elemental energy, which made him feel incredulous. After personally experimenting tens of thousands of times, she naturally knew that breaking through the half-formed formation wasn't something that could be done just by trying. There should be something that she didn't understand. I should be able to borrow it and take a look, right? Scratching his head, Yun Nuoxing looked at the array on the ground. With a thought, his soul force gushed out and entered the fiery red array, causing him to be slightly happy. He then hastily used his evil spirit eye to observe and analyze it. Just after analyzing it a little, Yun Nuoxing was stunned. His eyes widened as he seemed to have discovered the problem. Flowing in the fiery red energy patterns, other than the pure fire elemental energy, there was also a power that he wasn't too familiar with and that he had just obtained not long ago. It was the power of divinity. The power of divinity? It can break the elemental balance and form a pure elemental formation. After analyzing the energy contained within, Yun Nuoxing was slightly surprised. He hesitated for a moment and waved his hand. Soon after, a faint purple formation slowly condensed in front of him. Energy matrix lines core of the formation. Then, after the divinity energy was woven into the core of the formation, the energy pattern still didn't stop and almost spontaneously completed the formation. Looking at the faint purple formation floating in front of him and emitting surging flame energy, Yun Nuoxing was startled. He then shook his head with a bitter smile. He didn't expect that he would be able to solve it by accident. After learning the use of the divinity energy, he didn't immediately start analyzing the formation under his feet. Instead, he focused on the formations in his mind that he hadn't seen for a long time. The 10,000 spirits, killing formation, and the remaining parts of the Great Destruction formation. So that's how it is. After inserting the divinity energy, the blockages and doubts that he encountered in the high-level formations, such as the ceiling formation that he hadn't been able to completely weave, were easily solved. No wonder I couldn't weave the remaining parts. It turns out that they lack the divinity energy. Seeing this discovery, Yun Nuoxing also exclaimed in surprise. After his soul reached the god level, he fiddled with these two formations, but he still couldn't grasp the main points. He still couldn't weave the incomplete parts, and he couldn't even activate the many talismans. Now that he had the divinity energy, there was almost no problem in front of him. Discovering this made him feel even more excited than passing this stage. His attainments and formations had also stagnated for a period of time, and he didn't want to ask Yishi directly. He racked his brains for a long time, but he still couldn't solve it. Today, he had accidentally solved the difficult problem in front of him. The divinity energy has the function of perfection, balance, and transformation. No wonder it can transform the body structure. I'm afraid that after becoming a demigod, I won't be able to recognize my own body. Although it looks the same on the outside, the inside of my body might be different. After knowing this, Yun Nuoxing also heaved a sigh of relief. With the help of the divinity, he perfected a part of the 10,000 Daos destruction formation in his mind. When he felt that more than half of the energy in his body had been consumed, he remembered the purpose of this place. He hurriedly stopped and looked at the 80% completed 10,000 Daos destruction formation. Its power was countless times stronger than before, and it definitely had the power to contend with high-level gods. When it was completely perfected, he reckoned that he would be able to recognize the true power of the ceiling formation. Resisting the urge to immediately perfect it, Yun Nuoxing took a deep breath, closed his eyes, and began to recover the huge amount of energy that he had consumed. After resting for a short while, Yun Nuoxing once again felt that his body was filled with energy. He then stood up and looked at the formation under his feet. He could not help but smile. His evil spirit, I stared at the core of the formation and quickly analyzed it. Then his soul power surged out, and the silent red energy patterns slowly spread out under his guidance. It was also when he began to complete the formation that the energy between heaven and earth suddenly became violent. The energy of the fire element came crashing down from the sky, forming a huge whirlpool that continuously surged toward the formation. Scarlet flame formation, Yun Nuashing muttered. There was only half a formation here. When he used his evil spirit, eye, to analyze the core of the formation, he had seen through it completely. Naturally, he could complete it without spending too much effort. However, what made him puzzled was that when he saw through the formation, he also knew its purpose. This was a sealing formation that used the pure fire element to suppress the fire element, using the energy of the same origin to balance each other. Dark red energy patterns flew across the ground, causing the blazing ground to become unstable. Pillars of fire frequently erupted from the cracks in the ground, causing rocks weighing several dozen kilograms to be thrown into the sky. When they fell down, they were smashed into pieces, causing the blazing ground to become a scene of desolation. Those cracks had unintentionally widened, and fiery red magma could even be seen flowing through the mountain. Sensing that the ground had become unstable under the perfection of the formation, Yun Nuashing was slightly shocked. This formation just happened to encompass the scorching ground that was thousands of feet in size. Although it was called the ground, it was on the top of the mountain. The appearance of the pillars of fire erupting was extremely terrifying. Could it be that I made a mistake? Seeing the black ground become brighter and brighter and start to fall apart, Yun Nuashing was a little suspicious. Could it be that he should actually eliminate the formation instead of perfecting it? Forget it. Let's just make the best of it. After thinking for a moment, Yun Nuashing fiercely shook his head. In any case, there was no hint for him to do anything. Furthermore, he had already completed 2/3 of the formation. If he were to give up now, he felt that it was a little too late. Thinking of this, he also increased the output of his spiritual strength in a spurt of energy. After the energy patterns received this energy, their weaving speed suddenly increased. They rapidly scuttled across the black ground, and in less than half a minute, the scarlet flame formation was completed. Boom! Bang! The instant the scarlet flame formation was completed, the black ground suddenly burst with an explosive sound. The earth and rocks in a certain region burst open. Soon after, an incomparably huge magma hand soared up from the bottom of the mountain. Yun Nuashing stared blankly at it. After the huge hand soared up, it suddenly descended from the sky and fiercely slapped down at Yun Nuashing. A blazing wind blew against Yun Nuashing's body, causing him to suddenly sober up. Sensing the power contained in the magma hand, he couldn't help but curl his lips and subconsciously use the light element. Whoosh! Just as the light element appeared, Yun Nuashing's body flashed and disappeared from his original position. The magma hand also suddenly disappeared. Even the black ground returned to its original state in an instant. Yun Nuashing only felt his line of sight flicker. Then, he saw the black ground disappear before his eyes. When he focused his eyes again, he saw Zian and the others looking at him in astonishment. Yun Nuashing was stunned as he looked at the few beautiful faces in front of him. He pinched his cheeks. When he felt the pain, he shivered. He turned his head and looked in the direction of the metal chain. He was stunned as he said, "I have been chased out." Chapter 745. This is the 5th stage's formation of the gold difficulty. The gold difficulty is indeed completed, but the 5th stage is connected to the 6th stage. The large hand you saw is actually the 6th stage's formation. However, only the fire element can be used in the 6th stage. At most, the energy in the body can be used. Other elemental energies will be expelled once they are used. Lu Feng answered Yun Nuashing's doubts very calmly. In reality, when he heard the 8 bell rings, he knew that Yun Nuashing was attempting the gold difficulty. Now that he learned that Yun Nuoxing had passed the 5th stage, he was also rather surprised. No one had passed the 4th stage of the gold difficulty for hundreds or thousands of years. Hearing this strange condition, Yun Nuoxing was also very gloomy. However, he did not remain gloomy for long. He took a deep breath and was about to turn around and charge into the cloud fire's secret realm again when a large hand suddenly pressed down on his shoulder, surprising him. He turned around and saw Yang Hua pressing down on his shoulder. He frowned slightly. He seemed to see some hostility. "Kid, why don't we have a match?" Yang Hua grinned. Yin Nuoxing was stunned for a moment before frowning. When he sensed that his strength was greater than Xinming's, he could not help but become rather doubtful. Moreover, he had no reason to agree. Just as he was about to decline, he suddenly sensed a bolt of lightning hurtling towards him. Afterwards, he saw a fist filled with terrifying silver lightning hurtling towards his face. The oncoming thunder force made Yin Nuoxing pause. After he reacted, he hurriedly broke free from the palm that was pressing on his shoulder. Then, a formation that was about 10 feet in size appeared on his palm. The silver-blue power of space condensed on his palm, and a palm met the huge fist. Boom! The explosion caused by the collision of spatial energy and lightning energy startled all the students on the mountain peak. They hurriedly focused their eyes. When they saw the terrifying explosion of energy, they hurriedly stood up and retreated. Lu Feng, who was closest to them, was also stunned for a moment. When he came to his senses, he waved his hand to block the 2 forces that pounced over. He stood in front of Ziyin and the other girls, then frowned slightly as he looked at the place where the dust was flying. He never thought that Yang Hua would attack without saying anything. Swish! The sound of wind whistling rang out from the dust and swept it away. 2 figures shot out from the dust. One of them flickered with the color of stars, and from the looks of it, he seemed to be constantly retreating. The other figure charged forward with the power of lightning. The 2 figures clashed violently in the air. Every time they collided, the star-colored figure would tremble gently. Yin Nuoxing was bewildered as he looked at Yang Hua, who had a fanatical look on his face. He didn't know what was going on. He didn't dare to use the light element here. Compared to Yang Hua's lightning element, his speed was much slower. Thunderous fist. After a few hundred wild exchanges, Yin Nuoxing's arms were a little sore and numb. He had just flown backwards for a distance, and before he could stabilize himself, Yang Hua's hands formed a seal with lightning-like speed. Soon after, an enormous thundercloud descended from the sky. Numerous silver-blue thunderbolts were like lightning dragons as they roared and flickered within the thundercloud. That frightening might cause the students below to tremble. Lu Feng also frowned deeply. Before he could move, Yang Hua had continuously compressed the enormous thundercloud until it was only the size of a palm, after which his body flashed and appeared in front of Yin Nuoxing in an instant. Without any hesitation, he smashed his enormous fist downwards. "Old bastard, did you take the wrong medicine?" Yin Nuoxing was shocked and could not help but curse. His 6 wings unfurled from his back with a bang. The element of light flowed rapidly in his meridians, rotating head to tail. In an instant, a golden formation appeared in front of him. This golden formation was the imperial god diagram that Lin Sheng had used before. However, Yin Nuoxing was much more proficient in it than the former. After it was used, the energy lines within it flickered and changed rapidly. In the blink of an eye, it had changed completely. The aura it exuded was no longer as impregnable as before. Instead, it was as sharp as a sharp spear. Imperial God Diagram, Imperial God Sword. Terrifying sword chi swirled around the Imperial Spirit Diagram. Yin Nuoxing grabbed the Imperial Spirit Diagram with his right hand, and with a light shout, he sent a palm strike towards the fist that was whistling towards him. Yang Hua's eyes flashed with surprise as the terrifying sword chi wreaked havoc from the golden formation. He then laughed loudly, and the energy in the thundercloud became even more majestic. He clenched his hand into a fist and threw a punch at the golden formation that carried the terrifying sword chi. The silver-blue lightning that burst out caused pitch-black spatial cracks to appear in the space. Bang! The two energies that carried the lightning and the terrifying sword chi collided violently in the air. After a dull sound of flesh colliding, the sound of thunder exploded wildly in the sky. Streaks of silver-blue lightning and the golden sword chi came into contact and frantically devoured each other. Crack! The pitch-black clouds churned wildly in the sky, filled with an extremely terrifying aura of destruction. Wherever the silver-blue lightning passed, it seemed that everything would be annihilated. The golden formation also emitted a monstrous sword chi. The terrifying collision was like the collision of two meteorites. Even though the two of them were high in the sky, the mountain range below them slowly trembled under the collision of the energies. Boom! Crack! The energy fluctuation that was filled with a destructive aura spread rapidly in the air from the collision. The terrifying thunderbolt force directly caused the golden formation to fluctuate continuously. Under the crazy impact of the thunderbolt force, a clear shattering sound quietly entered everyone's ears. This junior is so strong. He can actually fight against a heaven-ranked elder. He can't hold on any longer. This scene caused many students below to cry out in surprise. They didn't know why Elder Yanghua suddenly attacked Yinuashing. Furthermore, he attacked so ruthlessly. Those who didn't know would think that the two of them were enemies. Yinuashing also looked at the crack on the Imperial God diagram in shock. Her heart trembled slightly. Her colorful eyes looked at Yanghua, who was after the energy explosion. With the strength of a heaven-ranked deity, he should be an elder of this academy. Thunderbolt force, lightning element. Could he be someone from the Lightning Divine Palace? At that time, Yinfeng also seemed to have told her that someone would find trouble with him. She didn't expect it to happen so quickly. Hey, kid, you can't hold on any longer? Seeing this scene, Yanghua grinned. At the same time, he poured even more energy into the Golden Imperial God diagram. The tyrannical thunderbolt force spread over the Golden Imperial God diagram, causing more and more cracks to appear. On the other hand, the thundercloud was still surging. From the looks of it, Yinuashing's Imperial God diagram would be the first to collapse. This old bastard is serious. At this moment, Lu Feng's expression was slightly unsightly. His spirit energy was rapidly circulating in his body. Clearly, he was ready to attack at any time. He didn't know why Yanghua had gone crazy, but from the looks of it, the latter didn't seem to have any intention of stopping. Compared to Lu Feng's nervousness, Xian and Yi, she were relatively calmer. Although heaven-ranked deities were very powerful, Yinuashing hadn't even pulled out her divine weapon at this moment. Therefore, she definitely had the strength to deal with it. Yinuashing's expression was stern as he stared at the Imperial God diagram that was about to shatter. He appeared extremely calm at this moment. His colorful eyes were bright and solid. Through the complicated energy, he quietly stared at Yanghua. His indifferent gaze caused the latter to be slightly stunned. His right hand, which was holding the Imperial God diagram, trembled slightly. One of his hands formed a seal, and then he suddenly pushed the Imperial God diagram. The Imperial God diagram, which had already reached its limit, suddenly exploded under this force, scattering into specks of light that filled the sky. The moment the Imperial God diagram shattered, a sword aura that seemed to have been suppressed for countless years madly counterattacked, forcing the oppressive thundercloud to shrink slightly. Yanghua was also shocked by this sword aura. His figure was pushed back more than 10 meters. He withdrew his right hand that contained the thundercloud. Before he could look at Yinuashing in surprise, the energy aura around him shook him slightly. Buzz! In the sky, 6 huge, colorful arrays slowly emerged from the void. Each array was tens of thousands of feet in size. They were connected to each other and sealed off a space, sealing Yanghua within. The energy contained in the arrays caused the expressions of countless people to change drastically. Outside the arrays, Yinuashing took a deep breath and wiped the sweat from her forehead. After learning about the effect of divinity on arrays in the 5th stage, she completed the 10,000 spirits killing array and the Great Destruction array. The 10,000 Tao Destruction array that was formed at this moment was already close to a perfect state. Previously, the Great Refining array that was flawed could cause a certain amount of damage to an Underworld King expert. After the 10,000 Tao Destruction array was completed, the destructive power that spread out was enough to give an Underworld Emperor expert a headache. The smile on Yang Hua's face also stiffened at this moment. He slowly looked around and saw that he was submerged in the 6 huge arrays. He was speechless, especially when he felt the terrifying energy in the arrays. The energy there made his heart tremble. He had a feeling that if the 6 arrays were to operate at the same time, he might die here. Condense. Yin Nuoxing didn't pay attention to Yang Hua's change in expression. He let out a light breath, changed his hand seal, and let out a light shout. The 6 arrays responded and started to rotate slowly. They didn't know if it was an illusion or not, but everyone seemed to hear a series of ka-ka sounds. It was as if the 6 arrays were 6 huge millstones grinding something. As the arrays rotated, everyone also saw that at the edge of the arrays, the void cracked open. Dark cracks continuously appeared, and the cracking sounds seemed to be coming from them. The arrays were grinding all the energy in the space. Even the power of space was not spared. Under the gaze of countless people, the 6 colorful arrays set off circles of energy ripples. Boundless energy rapidly condensed in the center of the 6 arrays. The momentum of the condensing energy caused the mountain range to shake violently again. The monstrous energy caused the sky and earth to change color. Regardless of whether it was Yang Hua or the others, they all felt a sense of horror. Wait! Seeing this, Lu Feng was surprised, but at the same time, he was unable to hold himself back. With a flash, he appeared beside Yin Nuoxing in a hurry. He looked at Yin Nuoxing rather nervously and whispered, "Godchild, wait a moment." Yin Nuoxing was also stunned when she heard that. She frowned, but she still nodded. Her hand seal changed slightly, and the energy condensed in the 6 arrays immediately froze. It was like a volcano that was about to erupt had swallowed back the magma. Sensing that the destructive energy had paused for a moment, Lu Feng let out a sigh of relief. Then he frowned at Yang Hua, who was in the array, and said in a deep voice, "Have you had enough fun?" Hearing that, Yang Hua, who was in the array, laughed dryly. With a wave of his hand, the thunder cloud dissipated. He nodded and said with a smile, "I've had enough fun. The Godchild is indeed the Godchild. I was blind. I admire you." The latter part of the sentence was naturally said to Yin Nuoxing through voice transmission. He looked at the 6 arrays in horror. Any one of the arrays could turn him into dust. If the 6 arrays were to be used together, even an emperor of the underworld expert would die in them. Then, he would probably completely disappear from the divine world. Hearing this form of address, Yin Nuoxing was also a little surprised and doubtful. He turned his gaze to Lu Feng, and only after seeing him nod his head did he slowly disperse the formation. However, his gaze towards Yang Hua was still somewhat unfriendly, even though he knew Yang Hua was from the Nine Gods Hall. Anyone who was suddenly attacked as soon as they came out would not be in a good mood, especially when this person was a divine god. Yin Nuoxing was, after all, only a devil rank expert. In the collision just now, she had suffered a loss due to carelessness. Moreover, she could not use the light element openly. If she could, she would have killed Yang Hua long ago. Chapter 746. After a baffling contest, Yin Nuoxing rubbed her numb arm and looked at Yang Hua, who was standing a few steps away, with some resistance. Regarding the matter just now, he did not say that he would let it go. He was not a magnanimous person. On the contrary, at certain moments, he was a petty person, such as now. Lu Feng explained the matter to Yin Nuoxing through telepathy, which made her understand something. However, even though she understood and her expression returned to normal, she still looked at Yang Hua with an unfriendly gaze. She looked as if she could not wait to beat him up. Logically speaking, the moment he came out, he attacked without saying a word. How would he be nice to him? If it weren't for the fact that he was an array master and was proficient in array formations that strengthened his body and raised his attributes to the point where he could barely contend against a divine underworld powerhouse. Coupled with the power of space, he was able to contend against the divine underworld powerhouse. If he had been just a little slower, it would have been his turn to be beaten. Seeing Yun Nuoxing's expression, Lu Feng shrugged his shoulders, then threw a look at Yang Hua that said, "Good luck." In the end, Yang Hua had brought this upon himself. He would not speak up for him. He had already warned Yang Hua from the beginning. If Yang Hua did not listen, then there was nothing for him to do. I understand. What can't I understand? I just hate people like you who launch sneak attacks. Can't you talk things over nicely? It's as if I can't cooperate if you don't attack, Yin Nuoxing said faintly. The resentment in her words made Yang Hua and Lu Feng laugh dryly. However, he was just complaining and did not continue to pursue the matter. He sighed, ignored the strange gazes, and said goodbye to Ziyin and the others. Then, he flew into the Cloud Fire's secret territory. Seeing Yin Nuoxing leave without saying anything, Yang Hua seemed to want to say something, but he just sighed and looked at Lu Feng. When the latter saw his gaze, he looked at him with disdain and said, "Don't look at me. I won't speak up for you. You brought this upon yourself." How did I bring this upon myself? I just wanted to test the godchild's strength. Yang Hua mumbled in annoyance when he heard that. Yes, you did. You were almost completely wiped out. Do you think the Great Elder and the others have nothing better to do than to protect the divine child? If the Great Elder and the others know about this, they will definitely use you to fill the sea eye of the Southern Ice Realm. Lu Feng glared at him and said angrily. In response, Yang Hua could only laugh dryly and say nothing. If the Great Elder and the others knew that he had attacked the divine child, he would probably be in deep trouble. The Great Elder and even the Palace Master loved Yin Nuoxing so much that it was almost abnormal. While the two of them were talking, Yin Nuoxing charged into the Cloudy Fire's secret domain while enduring the soul pressure. Everyone's jaws dropped to the ground. Unknowingly, more than 10 minutes had passed. Just as Ziyin and the others were about to sit down cross-legged and wait, a figure suddenly flew out from the Cloudy Fire secret domain before they could sit down. Seeing that familiar color, they were startled and hurriedly moved. However, Bingo was faster. She immediately caught the person who flew out into her arms. Lu Feng and Yang Hua were also shocked and hurriedly ran over. When they saw Yin Nuoxing, who seemed to have been roasted by fire, they were speechless. She was so majestic just a moment ago. How could she be so miserable after going in? Furthermore, it seemed that she had been thrown out of the Cloud Fire's secret territory. Could it be that she had died in there? Yin Nuoxing's slender eyebrows were tightly knitted and her eyelids trembled for a while before she slowly opened them. Seeing that she was lying in Bing Air's arms with Ziyin and the others anxiously surrounding her, Yin Nuoxing came back to her senses and took a deep breath. Then, she smiled bitterly and said, "I was beaten out again. What happened this time?" Lu Feng asked. Yin Nuoxing smiled bitterly and helped little Bing Air to stand up. She patted her chest and said, "There is a flame overlord in the 7th level. Flames don't have a physical body. I don't know how to defeat it. I was fooled around, and then I was thrown out. The 7th level is not man-made. That flame overlord has always been living there. There are no restrictions on the 6th level. You can use any kind of energy. Take it slow. The 7th level is a hurdle. You can pass it after a few more tries." Lu Feng patted Yin Nuoxing's shoulder and comforted her. Hearing this, Yin Nuoxing could not help but smile bitterly. Try a few more times? That place was a world of magma, and there were fire elements everywhere. It could be said that in a place with unlimited fire elements, the flame overlord, who was only at the god level, could unleash power equal to or even surpass that of the god level. Furthermore, flames don't have a physical body. Many times, he could kill the flame overlord with one move. In the end, it would turn back into magma and merge into the magma sea, leaving him helpless. The moment Ziyin and the others heard this explanation, they felt a headache coming on. They then started to ponder over it and gave their own opinions and suggestions. Yin Nuoxing felt that this was something that could be used as a reference. However, as for trying it out, that would be putting their lives on the line. Even though one wouldn't die within the cloud fire secret grounds, one would still be tossed out with light injuries. Although he was a little unwilling in his heart, his body still obediently walked into the cloud fire secret realm. Ziyin and the others looked at each other for a while before shrugging their shoulders. This time, they wouldn't be able to help much. At most, they would be his human pillow when he was thrown out. Just as they were bored and waited for about 10 minutes, there was a sudden explosion of flames in the cloud fire mystery land. Everyone was shocked. Then they saw a figure flying out of the cloud fire mystery land like a meteorite falling from the sky. That scene stunned countless people. However, Feng'er flew out quickly and caught that person in her arms. So, no matter how strong the attack is, it's useless if it can't hit. Why not just use Starfall to blow this place up? In Feng'er's arms, Yin Nuoxing raised his black face and casually wiped it. He sighed and walked into the cloud fire mystery land, leaving behind Feng'er and the others with a helpless expression. Another 10 minutes later, Yin Nuoxing fell from the sky like a meteor. This time, it was Ziyin who went out to catch him. Then, Yin Nuoxing cursed again. He did not care that his black clothes were slightly burnt. He did not even wipe his face and directly rushed into the mystery land, as if he was going to compete with the flame overlord. 2 hours passed like this. Everyone watched as Yin Nuoxing rushed in and was thrown out. Then, he rushed in and was thrown out again. Over and over again, even his hair was slightly curled up from the heat. After Yin Nuoxing was thrown out for the last time, his face was darker than charcoal. Even after wiping it dry and wiping it clean, there were still black lines on his face. One could even see the veins on his forehead exploding. That playful face of his looked especially aggrieved at this moment. I'm not playing anymore. This is a scam. Rubbish game. Staring fiercely at the cloud fire mystery land, Yin Nuoxing suddenly swung his hand and turned around to leave while cursing. Behind him, Yishi, Ziyin, and the others smiled bitterly and followed. In these 2 hours, they had been watching him being tortured more than 10 times like this, each time more miserable than the last. Ziyin walked a few steps faster and walked side by side with Yin Nuoxing. He naturally held his hand and joked, "It's rare for a little star to encounter a difficulty that he can't overcome. I really don't know what to do this time. I can't hit it. No matter how strong my attack is, it's useless if I can't hit it." Yin Nuoxing smiled bitterly and squeezed her delicate little hand. His other hand was also held by Feng'er. He turned his gaze and looked at them. He smiled bitterly and said, "That flame overlord doesn't have a physical body. Every time I attack is about to hit it, it will turn back into its flame form. Even if it dissipates, it can still emerge from the lava. How do you expect me to fight it? Shameless. Sticky candy." In the end, he couldn't hold back the anger in his heart and scolded again. After hearing this, little Bing Air's blue gold eyes turned. Then she asked softly, "Daddy, how big is that lava sea?" Yin Nuoxing raised his head and thought for a while before saying, "I estimate that it has a radius of about 1,000 miles. Oh. Bing Air nodded slightly and didn't say much. Yin Nuoxing looked at her pondering face and scratched his head. However, he didn't think too much about it. Behind them, Lu Feng and Yang Hua caught up. They looked at Yin Nuoxing and asked respectfully, "God's child, where are you going now? We don't have anything to do now. Before I think of a way to deal with that thing, we probably won't go there. No matter how many times we go, we won't be able to take it down." Yin Nuoxing paused and scratched his long hair. Then, he said, "There's still more than 2 months. Let's take a walk around Burning Flame City. At the same time, we can ask around. The final battle of the 9 shrine ancestors seems to be in the east." Hearing him mention this, Lu Feng was taken aback. His expression changed slightly. His rotten face was pulled into a hideous expression. After a while, he said, "If God's child wants to go there to the east, slightly to the north, there is an elemental plane. In the center of the plane, there is an elemental stone pillar that is 10,000 feet tall. It's near there. There are traces of battle that haven't disappeared even after 3 eras. Elemental plane. Okay, I'll remember it. Yin Nuashing nodded and smiled at Lu Feng. He said, Elder Lu, you don't have to worry about us. If you have something to do, go ahead. Hearing this, Lu Feng also nodded. He clasped his hands at Yin Nuashing and said respectfully, God's child, take care. Yin Nuashing smiled and nodded. He waved his hand and led Xian and the other 3 into the sky. They rushed out of Burning Flame School. Lu Feng and Yanghua looked at each other and sighed. They also turned around and disappeared. After leaving the Blazing Fire Academy, they did not rush straight to the elemental planes. Instead, Yin Nuashing found a decent location in the Blazing Fire City and rented a small mansion. There was even a shop at the back of the mansion, so it was not crowded for the 5 of them to live together. After all, the 5 of them slept in one room with 2 beds. Yin Nuashing was a little speechless. He didn't know if it was because he was used to it, although he had some special feelings for Xian and Feng. Or now, after all, men and women couldn't be separated. Moreover, it was fine that the 2 girls slept on the same bed with him. Yishi also joined in the fun. Little Bing Er also didn't want to be outdone and squeezed together. It directly caused the bed to collapse that night, or rather, it collapsed because of the torment. Yin Nuashing wanted to reprimand them, but he couldn't say anything. He also felt helpless. He couldn't bear to reprimand any of the 4 girls. He could only let them do whatever they wanted. However, when the 4 girls saw Yin Nuashing's helpless and pained expression, they giggled and behaved themselves this time. The 3 of them squeezed on one bed, while Yishi and Little Bing Er squeezed on the other. Regarding this, Yin Nuashing was very speechless. There were 4 to 5 rooms here. Although the small courtyard was a little small, it wasn't so small that they couldn't live in it. Stay here for a while. Just treat it as a game. Come out to relax, and at the same time practice arrays and forging skills. I want to learn how to refine weapons. Lying on the bed, Yin Nuashing looked at an old book under the faint light of the crystal above his head and said softly, Refine weapons? Xian turned over and lay beside him, shoulder to shoulder. She also looked at Yin Nuashing's book with interest and asked casually, Yes, it's not useful to us, but in fact, formations have a very wide range of applications in daily life. Weave a formation into a tool and give it a unique ability. This is a formation tool. Yin Nuashing said, Ordinary small objects can possess the power of formation after they're formed and weaved into a formation. This is a formation tool, but it can also be weaved into a formation during the refining process. Both of them have the effect of a formation, but in terms of effect, the latter is much more powerful than the former. This is because the latter can determine the formation tool refined according to the use of the formation, while the former can only be given the power of the formation. Smithing art and smithing art are the same, but smithing art is purely used to forge weapons, whereas smithing art is used to refine some commonly used auxiliary tools that are supplemented by magic formations. For example, the airships, treasure basins, portable portals, and medicinal cauldrons that we've seen before are mostly non-aggressive. Of course, this depends on the refiner. Listening to Yin Nuashing's eloquence, Yishi also turned over in boredom and looked at him. She said, Brother Nua, why do you suddenly want to learn refining weapons? Yin Nuashing looked up thoughtfully, then said uncertainly, on a whim. Yishi looked at him speechlessly, then sighed and said, But Brother Nua is also a formation grandmaster now. Although you lack experience in forging skills, you can still be considered a beginner 7th rank blacksmith, which is a divine rank level 1 blacksmith. Based on these 2 points, there won't be any obstacles in refining weapons. But I don't believe that Brother Nua is doing this on a whim. You should have some special purpose, right? Yishi looked at Yin Nuashing and smiled wickedly. It's not completely on a whim. Part of the reason is indeed on a whim. Yin Nuashing nodded with a smile. He said, the star map is also a very powerful formation tool. It's a teleportation formation tool. Just to collect its fragments, I have to travel through the entire God realm. Now, I haven't even repaired 1/10 of it. I think that if I practice refining weapons, I might be able to repair it myself. But the structure of the star map is very complicated. It's as complicated as Su Ming and the others. To be honest, I don't have much confidence in repairing it. Yin Nuashing sighed. The star map was given to him by Xianin. Although it was in a damaged state when it was given to him, its profound function allowed him to freely travel through the God realm and teleport to wherever he wanted. However, in its current damaged state, not to mention traveling through the God realm, it was already good enough that it wasn't thrown underground. Last time, when he was teleported from Starfall City to find the Void Fire, he had thrown them into the Northern Ice Realm. This was also because the star map was too damaged, making it difficult to locate. If it was repaired, he really could go wherever he wanted. Chapter 747. One move to dominate the entire world. The next day, Yin Nuashing and the rest stood in front of the shop behind a mansion. The shop had been renovated and looked quite good. In the morning, many people gradually woke up. The street that the shop faced was one of the busiest in the city of burning flames. The rent for the mansion was rather high, but to Yin Nuashing, who was used to being rich, this price was nothing. The sun had just lit up the sky, and the city of burning flames came alive. People appeared on the street one after another. It was only dawn, but many people passed by. Most of them were stunned when they saw the shop that had suddenly opened. However, when they saw the few girls standing at the door, their eyes instantly widened. They couldn't even walk anymore. They all stopped and stared in shock, causing a few exaggerated traffic accidents, recycling old array tools, weapons, cauldrons. No. Repairing array tools, weapons, and arrays. Refining array tools and weapons at the same time. Starting from 10,000 gold for immortal rank, 10,000 gold for demon rank, and 300,000 gold for demigod rank. Prepare your own materials. Special treatment under special circumstances. There are only things you can think of, but nothing you can't refine. Looking at the signboard in front of the shop, Yin Nuashing nodded in satisfaction. Then, he looked at the last line of words and hesitated. Isn't the last line a little too exaggerated? Xian and the rest nodded silently. Yin Nuashing scratched his head in embarrassment. Just as they thought that he would change it, he said calmly, "Forget it. I'm too lazy to change it. Let's just do it." Xian and the rest. A few meters away from the shop was a small tavern. The business inside was booming as well. Regardless of the weather, the tavern was open from morning till night. The fine wine inside was unique and attracted countless people from the nearby streets. It was a rather good tavern in the city of burning flames. There wasn't much in Yin Nuashing's shop. There were only a few potted plants, a long table, and a few chairs. There were a few calligraphy and paintings hanging on the wall. It looked very simple and crude. Yin Nuashing looked around and saw Xian and the other girls. She couldn't help but tease, "It's indeed a bit shabby, but girl, just stand there and you'll be able to see the scenery of our restaurant." Xian rolled her eyes at him, stroked her long hair, and said softly, "You only read books last night. Can you handle it?" I know the theoretical knowledge. As for how to refine it, it's just refining anyway. Once I get it, I'll know. If it's just a problem with the spirit design, then it's not a problem." Yin Nuashing chuckled. She didn't feel nervous at all. Although she had done some last-minute research, it was enough. Moreover, it's the first day of business. There shouldn't be many people coming. Yin Nuashing looked at the bright sky. There were more and more people on the streets. He couldn't help but sigh. He wanted to divert his attention and see if he could get some inspiration from studying arrays and weapons. His goal was still to take down the Cloud Fire Secret Land. Opening a shop was just a side activity for him to rest and learn. "Do you want us to go out and receive customers? Be our signboard?" Xian smiled and rubbed his shoulder. Yin Nuashing coughed dryly. Then he pretended to be calm and said, "Forgive me, but our shop doesn't require such conditions." Xian looked at him with a smile, which made him a little uncomfortable. When she saw him looking away, she smiled and looked at Feng Er and the others. This guy was reluctant. Although there were many people on this street, and many passersby would take a look at the shop that suddenly opened, not many people were interested. They just took a look and left. Yin Nuashing and the others didn't do anything to open the shop. They simply opened the door and hung a sign outside. Therefore, after half a day, not a single customer stepped into the shop. Yin Nuashing wasn't in a hurry. He didn't make a living by opening a shop. He just came here to play with a half-interested attitude. He treated it as a life experience. The tavern next to it was much better than this cold shop. Even though they were separated by 2 walls and an alley, they could still hear the clamor inside. There were countless people coming and going, which made many people take a second look at this cold shop. However, it was just a second look. Xian and the others were bored and wanted to go shopping. However, after secretly glancing at Yin Nuoxing, who was reading quietly, they gave up the idea. They sat with him in the shop and took the books and his pendant to read. Just after noon, Yishi, who couldn't sit still, dragged Xian to the tavern next door to buy wine. They brought back several jars of wine, and all of them were opened. The fragrance of the wine almost suffocated Yin Nuoxing. However, what surprised Yin Nuoxing was that after the 2 girls went to buy a few jars of wine, they actually brought back a group of people. They were dressed luxuriously and seemed to be the young masters of some powerful forces in the city. Not only did this group of people squeeze into the shop, but Yin Nuoxing could also see the onlookers outside through the window. This made Yin Nuoxing speechless. He glanced at Xian. She was also carefully looking at Yin Nuoxing and cutely sticking out her little tongue. Needless to say, he knew that with this girl's ability to cause trouble, this group of people must have been attracted by her beauty. This girl could attract a group of people just by buying wine. Slowly closing the book, Yin Nuoxing sat quietly on the chair without any intention of getting up. She looked at the group of people who entered the shop and said softly, "May I know what business you have with us?" "Our shop takes care of all the maintenance and refining of array tools and weapons. Is there anything we can help you with?" The group of young men who walked into the shop were slightly surprised when they saw that although the shop was very big, it seemed very empty because there were no furnishings. They looked at Xian, Feng and little Bing Air with interest, and then fixed their eyes on Yin Nuoxing. A glimmer of light flashed in their eyes, and they smiled. "Young lady, are you a blacksmith?" Yin Nuoxing's face twitched slightly, and she nodded casually. "I've studied it." The young man smiled and reached out to stop the person behind him who wanted to speak. Then, he thought for a while and took out an item from his pocket. He gently placed it in front of Yin Nuoxing and said, "This is a 4th-grade demon rank weapon. It has been used for a long time, and the array inside is worn out. Young lady, can you repair it?" Yin Nuoxing glanced at him and was a little surprised that this young man didn't act rashly. Moreover, from his identity, he didn't seem to care about a 4th-grade demon rank weapon. It was obvious that he came for them. However, she didn't say anything. Since he was a guest, it would be fine as long as he didn't cause trouble. Her eyelids drooped slightly, and her slender hand slowly stroked a small bell that was about a foot long on the table. This bell was black, and there were strange patterns engraved on the surface of the bell. There were also some dents, as if it had been dented by a violent impact. Moreover, the array inside seemed to be half destroyed. It wasn't impossible to repair it, but the cost of repairing it was enough to buy a better one. The evil spirit looked at it for a while, but Yin Nuoxing smiled faintly. She raised her head and looked at the young man. She said with a faint smile, "The weapon that young master has taken out isn't a 4th-grade demon rank weapon, but a demon rank weapon. Moreover, the reason for its damage isn't because of overuse, but because it has been worn down by time. This small bell should be a demon rank weapon that has been abandoned for more than 1,000 years. However, you have renovated its appearance, making it look no different from a newly damaged one." When he heard Yin Nuoxing directly expose the nature of the small bell, the young man looked at Yin Nuoxing in surprise. His eyes rolled, and then he smiled and cupped his hands together. "Young lady, you have good eyesight. That's right. This bell was obtained from a relic. It's a high-grade demon rank weapon, and that relic has existed for more than 1,000 years." When Yin Nuoxing heard this, she curled her lips in an unconcerned manner. That lovely manner caused the young man's eyes to involuntarily emit some fire. After which, he laughed softly and said, "I was rude when I tested young miss earlier. I wonder if young miss can repair it? I can pay a high price." Yin Nuoxing lowered her head and looked at the small bell that was so badly damaged that it was unbearable to look at. She was a little speechless. However, since it was her first business deal, she could only pinch her nose and accept it. Come and get it tomorrow. If there's nothing else, please leave. The main reason was that Yun Nuoxing felt a headache when she saw the green light in the eyes of this group of young men. She could only helplessly ask them to leave. At the same time, she could not help but curse in her heart. It was as though this group of people had never seen a woman before. There was something wrong with their eyes. However, it was no wonder. In an empty shop, there were only 5 young ladies who were worth looking at. These 5 clearly included Yun Nuoxing. If they knew that she was actually a man, it was unknown if they would poke their own eyes out. The group of young men also understood that Yun Nuoxing wanted them to leave. They curled their lips and did not seem to have any intention of paying attention to her. However, the young man who led the group put on a smile that he thought was gentle. He then cupped his hands and gradually left the shop. He was not worried that the small bell would disappear. It was originally a piece of junk. Many blacksmiths would say that it could not be repaired even if they saw it. As for Yun Nuoxing's words, he did not question it. It was not that he did not want to question it, but that he did not want to question it in front of these women. It would make him feel that he was lacking in character. We're leaving just like that? After they were some distance away from the shop, the people behind the young man could not help but mutter. They looked at the elegant young man strangely. When they were in the tavern, he was the one who struck up a conversation with Yun Nuoxing first. In the shop, he was also the one who left first. They could not figure out what he was thinking. It's normal for blacksmiths to be a little arrogant. I didn't expect that little girl who looked like she was only 16 years old to be a blacksmith. The young man smiled. In a new shop, there was nothing inside except for a few girls. If it were not for the sign hanging at the door, perhaps no one would know what they were doing. That little thing is useless. At least it's useless before it's repaired. It's just an excuse to talk to them again. Hee. Hearing this person's words, those young men could not help but click their tongue. This guy was attracted to beauties again. The girls in that room were all top-notch beauties. Would any of them be harmed by him? However, these people's worries were not a problem at all, because when they entered the room, Feng, and the others did not even look at them. This also showed that they did not care at all. The only person they cared about was Yun Nuoxing. If Yun Nuoxing knew what this young man was thinking, she probably would not accept the order and would directly ask him scram. However, he did not know that. Moreover, since he had accepted this business, he would also seriously repair it. The so-called seriousness was that he would spend 2 hours at night fiddling with it. He found new materials and repaired it. The worn-out little bell was restored to its original state. Even the array inside was restored. His God-ranked soul, coupled with the evil spirit I allowed him to observe in detail. Not all complicated arrays could be seen clearly, so this little thing was naturally not a problem for him. What made him curious was that after the little bell was repaired, he could see that it was neither a weapon nor an array tool. It was a key that had reached the demigod rank. A key. After coming out of the forging room, Yun Nuoxing casually threw the little bell to Yi Shi. When the latter heard his words, she was slightly taken aback. She casually caught it and looked at it. She also understood why he said it was a key. The array engraved on the little bell was a kind of array that could be used to unlock or open something. This array was the type that was used to unlock or open something. This array was the type that was used to unlock or open something. Although they were curious, they didn't think too much about it. The next day, they threw this thing to the young man who came to the shop early. This time, he was the only one who came, and it was obvious at first glance that he had dressed up meticulously. The luxurious clothes and the hair accessories showed that he had come with intentions without needing anyone to explain. However, regarding this, Yun Nuoxing and the others did not take a second look. The young man was also not in a hurry. He picked up the little bell and looked at it. The smile on his face instantly stiffened. Including the cost of the materials, a total of 10,000 gold. Thank you. Seeing him stiffen, Yun Nuoxing didn't know why he was so stiff and said to himself. The young man was stunned. Then, he stared at her very seriously for a long time. After a while, he smiled faintly. He casually took out a space ring and placed it on the table. After thinking for a while, he gently put down a gold card and said with a smile, "Miss, here's 1 million. I'll have to trouble you with the things inside. I still have something to do, so I'll take my leave." After saying that, he politely cupped his hands and smiled faintly at Zian and the others. Then, he turned around and walked out of the shop unhurriedly. When he walked half a street away, he turned around and saw that there was no movement in the shop. Only then did he quickly run away. Yin Nuoxing reached out and grabbed the space ring. After casually looking inside for a while, she could not help but say, "The things inside are placed casually. They shouldn't be anything important. Moreover, they're all pitifully rotten things. A few of them are so rotten that they're incurable. It's most likely a bargaining chip that he used to get in touch with you." However, he suddenly realized that he had something to do and just happened to throw it away. Yishi took a sip of tea and said, "Who cares? Since it's a business deal, just accept it. One day should be enough." Yin Nuoxing smiled and took the gold card. She smiled and said, "The first bucket of gold in life. Yes, yes." Chapter 748. In the forging room, a purple-red flame was surging in the furnace. Vast soul power turned into thin threads and invaded the formation tools and weapons in the flames, repairing the formations inside. Occasionally, one or two pieces of metal would be thrown in to repair the damaged areas. If other blacksmiths were watching, they would be so shocked that their tongues would fall out. Yin Nuoxing was repairing two formation tools and weapons at the same time. This was even more difficult than refining two divine-grade weapons at the same time. She had to stably divide one strand of soul power into two strands and accurately transmit the information back. At the same time, she couldn't misinterpret the information. Even a Grandmaster Blacksmith wouldn't dare to do this kind of multitasking. A Grandmaster Blacksmith has become a repairman. Yishi sat on the edge of the forging table and swung her legs. Looking at the busy Yin Nuoxing, she couldn't help but say with pity, "Big brother Na, your talent is crying." Ahem. Yin Nuoxing coughed dryly and said, "It's all the same. When a swordsman can't find a kitchen knife, he can only draw the sword at his waist to cut vegetables. But wouldn't it be more attractive if you hang up the signboard of can forge 7th grade weapons? Although there are many people who doubt it, there might be people who come to take a look. After the fame spreads, people will know that there really is a 7th grade blacksmith grandmaster here." Yin was sitting on a small stool at the side. Her slender and perfect jade legs were crossed, and her jade hand was supporting her chin. She was looking at the serious Yin Nuoxing, and her beautiful eyes were twinkling with splendor. The little star who was concentrating on something really looked very attractive. But a Grandmaster Blacksmith is a human resource. It's very popular everywhere. When the time comes, people will come to find me, right? I don't want to deal with those troubles." Yin Nuoxing tilted her head and glanced at Zian. She then turned back and focused on repairing the formation tools in the furnace. From time to time, she would condense her soul power into a heavy hammer and lightly hit it. "Did you get anything?" Fulner asked gently. "No." Yin Nuoxing shook his head helplessly. He thought that by looking at other things and diverting his attention, he would be able to quickly think of something that would help him overcome the hurdle he was currently facing. However, it had only been a day or two, and there was still plenty of time. He was not in a hurry and was in a good mood. After refining for a while, Yin Nuoxing seemed to have thought of something. Without turning her head, she said softly, "Girl, you're about to advance to the demigod level, right?" Hin, who was looking at him in a daze, paused for a moment, then nodded and said, "I'm at the peak of the demon rank. I think I'll be able to break through to the demigod rank in a few days." As soon as she said this, Yin Nuoxing and Yishi's expressions changed slightly. Yin Nuoxing's face was a little bitter, but she didn't think too much about it. After all, he was in such a state. Yishi, on the other hand, was a little happy. It had only been a little more than a month since the last challenge, and this girl had advanced 2 realms in a row, reaching the peak of the demon rank. This had a lot to do with Xian's talent. Originally, after reaching the demon rank, one's cultivation should get slower and slower, but this girl did the opposite. The most important point was that she had always been by Yin Nuoxing's side, and The resonance between the five elements body and the spiritual godly body allowed her to cultivate very quickly. At that time, she had also eaten a Chilan moon, and the godly medicine's effect had been changing her potential and body. It was understandable for her to have such a cultivation speed. If Yunuashing cultivated normally, she would have already reached the third cycle of the demigod rank, but he could only hold it in. As if seeing Yunuashing's gloomy face, Xian wanted to comfort her, but after thinking about it, he changed the topic and said with a smile, "Little star, I want to go to the southern ice realm to take a look." This sudden change of topic startled Yunuashing, but then she nodded with a smile. "Okay, the southern ice realm will be added to the waiting list. As for when to go, well, you can decide, or it depends on the situation." Xian smiled. When they changed the topic, Yunuashing would temporarily put the previous matter aside. It wasn't that he had forgotten, but he still remembered it. He just didn't mention it. Half a day passed quietly, and the efficiency was much faster than expected. As the night approached, Yunuashing repaired the 8 things in the space ring. When he casually asked what plans they had for the night. "Shopping. Daddy, I want to eat." The girls gave 2 answers at the same time, making Yunuashing speechless. However, he didn't refuse and agreed. After casually tidying up the shop, he brought the girls out. At night, Burning Flame City was bustling as well. On both sides of a street that was not too wide, there were many shops. Before one could walk to the end of the street, one could smell all sorts of fragrances wafting out from the food street. Just the smell of the food made one's stomach growl uncontrollably. As expected, compared to the restaurants, the food street is more enjoyable. Eating from one end of the street to the other, this is the happiness of a foodie. Standing at the street entrance, the street was filled with lights. Although it wasn't crowded to the point of being crowded, it was already very lively. Little Bing suddenly sniffled, and her blue-gold eyes lit up. Without saying a word, she grabbed Yunuashing and began to run with her long, jade-like legs. Being suddenly pulled, Yunuashing also cried out in surprise. He quickly grabbed Ziyan's jade-like hand and then dragged her to run. Ziyan also cried out in surprise and pulled Feng Er. Feng Er carried Yi Shi, and the 5 of them formed a long strip and ran on the snack street. That scene made all the passers-by stare with their eyes wide open. After a while, Bing Er rushed into a shop with a few of them. Without another word, she sat at the biggest table. Then, she stared at the shop with her shiny mane Mao, full of anticipation. The shop wasn't very big. There were only 6 small rectangular tables, and each table could only fit 5 people. There were warm crystals hanging on the walls, and the shop was empty. Similar to the bleakness of autumn, the shop was cold and cheerless. "Oh, customers are here. What would you like to order? I recommend our shop's signature medicinal cuisine. Just one bite will keep you warm for the whole autumn and winter." A person suddenly appeared behind the stove. It was a middle-aged man with a clean apron around his waist. It seemed to be new, and his face was full of smiles. There were no waiters or waiters in the shop, so the middle-aged man was probably the boss. Yunuashing smiled and said, "Then let's order the medicinal cuisine. Give me 5 servings first." "All right, no celery, okay," the boss answered. In just a few minutes, 5 servings of medicinal cuisine, 5 bowls of white rice, and a side dish made of green vegetables filled the small table to the brim. "Hee, it's rare for a few young ladies to come to this shabby shop, so I'll give you a portion of my secret spiritual dish," the boss said with a smile. After putting down the food, he turned around and went back to the stove. He squatted under the stove as if he was doing something. Yunuashing took a deep breath, and a hint of spiritual light flashed through her eyes. There were some spiritual herbs in this medicinal cuisine. Perhaps they weren't very old, but the rich spiritual energy was enough to increase a cultivator's cultivation level. However, at this moment, he didn't care about the spiritual energy. He just smelled the fragrance of the food. He quickly raised his chopsticks and said with a smile, "I'll eat first as a sign of respect." After saying that, he suddenly buried his head into the pot and the white rice. A satisfied expression appeared on his face as he ate the meat of an unknown demonic beast with the white rice. He raised his head and took a deep breath with his eyes closed, as if he was about to ascend to heaven. When Ziyin and the others saw his exaggerated expression, they also smiled faintly. They carefully picked up the medicinal ingredients in the jar and slowly placed them into their small mouths. Their elegant chewing and swallowing caused Yun Nuoxing's pretty face to turn slightly red. She hurriedly slowed down her speed. It was such an ordinary shop. The dim light of the crystals, the shabby tables and chairs, and the delicious food that made people drool. The warm light and steam filled the shop, and the atmosphere was warm and harmonious. "Boss, give me 10 more servings in batches." Yin Nuoxing greeted the boss. He was distracted for a moment, and when he came back to his senses, he found that little Bing Air and Feng had already finished the food in front of him and reached into his pot. He was speechless. He glanced at the two women, and they were also blushing. However, they still ate the less than half of his remaining food under his gaze. They didn't even leave the bones for him. "Weren't you guys eating very elegantly and slowly just now?" Yin Nuoxing muttered gloomily. "Okay." The person behind the stove responded to the boss's voice. However, after a while, the boss slowly stood up. Yin Nuoxing was a little curious. He couldn't help but walk over and ask, "Is there anything I can help you with?" When the boss saw him suddenly walk over, he was also surprised. Then, he chuckled and said, "It's nothing. It's just that the array tool under the stove is a little broken. It's a little slow because one pot is missing. However, it's not a big deal. There aren't many people anyway." "Array tool? Do you need me to help fix it?" Yin Nuoxing smiled. "Little girl, are you a weapon refiner?" When he heard this, the boss was a little surprised. However, he wasn't too surprised. When he saw the clothes of this group of little girls, he knew that they weren't ordinary people. However, he didn't know why they came to his place to eat. "I know a little." Yin Nuoxing nodded. He was too lazy to change the way he addressed her. In any case, they weren't people who spent a lot of time together. It didn't matter whether he changed the way he addressed her or not. After he finished speaking, he walked behind the stove and squatted down. He looked at the array tool under the stove. The boss also stepped aside and focused on watching Yin Nuoxing fiddle with it. "Okay." After a while, Yin Nuoxing stood up, clapped her hands, and smiled. "Thank you, little girl." The boss chuckled and said, "Go and sit for a while. I'll send it to you in a while. Make it big." "Thank you, boss." Yin Nuoxing also responded with a smile. Not long after, the boss brought over a few new earthen jars. They were much more beautiful than the previous ones. Moreover, the spirit energy coming out of the jars was denser than the previous ones. It was obvious that these were spirit herbs of a higher age. The boss chuckled as he looked at Yin Nuoxing and the others, who were eating enthusiastically. His hands were busy with the next set. He couldn't help but sigh. Little girls nowadays can eat too much. After struggling for a while, they added 5 more sets. When they were satisfied, the 5 of them left the medicinal cuisine shop. Then, they ran to the snack stall next door and picked up skewers. They also carried rice balls, barbecued meat, and various kinds of magical beast meat in their hands. The spirit energy was dense. Yin Nuoxing also fully displayed the style of foodie. They ate from the street to the end of the street, sweeping away the clouds. Even Ziyin and the others followed suit and ate heartily. In any case, the food that entered their stomachs would quickly be broken down into energy. This energy didn't seem to be particularly abundant. To put it simply, it wasn't easy to eat until they were full, unless it was some medicinal cuisine that was very rich in spiritual energy or the meat of powerful magical beasts. Burp. Ziyin supported Yin Nuoxing's shoulder. Half of her body was hanging on him. She burped and said softly, "I ate too much." "Too much? I think it's okay." "Well, if you ate too much, take a rest. You can leave later." Yin Nuoxing glanced at her and nodded. When she responded, she buried her head in a piece of golden barbecued meat that was the size of a wash basin. When the people on the side heard this, their cheeks couldn't help but twitch. They looked at the spoils of war beside Yin Nuoxing and the others. There were hundreds of plates and bowls piled up. These girls must have eaten at least 500 kilograms. It was frightening to see them. How could these beautiful girls eat so much? and they were all as slim as willows. How could those who didn't eat and would get fat if they didn't eat? When Xian and Yi Shi were declared dead, Yin Nuoxing, Feng, and Little Bing Er were still eating. The latter two were mythological beasts and could eat a lot. However, Yin Nuoxing was a human. Although she was slightly transformed by divinity and basically belonged to the category of non-human, she was at least a human. Xian didn't understand why she could eat so much. The food here contained a lot of energy. Gradually, her digestion speed couldn't keep up with her eating speed. She had to stop eating. Could it be that the divine body of a receptive spirit could eat a lot? Seeing Yin Nuoxing struggling with one hand, Xian tacitly agreed. In the end, they almost finished all the ingredients in the shop. Only then did the five of them walk out with satisfaction under the dull gazes of the boss and the staff. Those who were also eating in the shop were so dazed that they forgot to eat. The food on the table had turned cold. These girls must be monsters. They ate 10,000 gold coins in one meal. The boss smiled bitterly as he looked at the messy kitchen. He couldn't help but sigh bitterly. Children these days really had a big appetite. 10 gold coins was enough for an ordinary family of 4 to live a well-fed life for a year. The 5 of them ate the food of 4 people for 1,000 years. Are you full? Yin Nuoxing walked to the end of the food street and stopped halfway up a small mountain. Looking down at half of Burning Flame City, she glanced at the girls who didn't want to walk and couldn't help but laugh. I haven't eaten so much in many years. Yi Shi smiled bitterly and held her stomach. Even though she was an Emperor God expert, she still needed a while to digest the food in her stomach. She was probably the one who digested the fastest among them. I'm full. Fenger rubbed her stomach and stuck out her little tongue. You and Bing Er can eat more than me. Yin Nuoxing rolled her eyes and rubbed Fenger's stomach. She said, it's already bulging. Fenger pouted and leaned her delicate body against him. She closed her main mouth and enjoyed the night breeze. She was very comfortable. Daddy, I still want to eat. Little Bing Er hung on Yin Nuoxing's body. Her pair of blue and gold eyes sparkled as she looked at Yin Nuoxing. Yin Nuoxing and the others. Chapter 749. The 7th stage. 5 seconds passed. The 8th stage. 1, 2, 8 seconds. Continue. Ugh. Although I've lost everything, I still want to watch. At this moment, there was an uproar on the lively street. Following a series of countdowns, there was a loud cheer as if there was a lively event going on. 12 stages, 15 seconds passed. Too strong. I lost again. This little girl is actually a formation master. No, this is the standard of a master. Definitely at the standard of a master. A wall of people formed in the lively area, as if the people from the nearby streets had all come over. They abandoned their shops and ran over to watch. Through the crowd, one could see that in the center there was an azure formation flickering. A girl with colorful hair stood in front of the huge formation, her eyes focused on the formation. After a while, she raised her hand and moved it a few times. The formation instantly disintegrated, shattering into azure particles and dissipating. Roar. The 15th stage. When the crowd saw the shattered formation, they roared again, as if they were happier to see the girl crack the formation than to see themselves crack it. This was a game that was related to magic arrays. Players only needed to continuously crack the magic arrays. Of course, the cracking here couldn't be done with brute force. One could only use the power of the soul or use magic arrays to crack the magic arrays. For magic array masters, this game was quite familiar. Many magic array masters would use this game to strengthen their own magic array attainments. This kind of game formation device was quite common. Even if there were many formations on it, they were common formations that ordinary formation masters could come into contact with. There was nothing taboo about it. Starting from the first stage, the immortal grade formation, the difficulty gradually increased. Later on, there would be compound formations. Some of them only existed in theory, and those had to be cracked with theory. Oh, the 20th stage. I've lost so much that I want to cry, but I'm still very excited. I've decided. I'll still bet that she can't crack it in the next round. Brother, I've already made a lot of money by betting that she can crack it. Why are you still betting that she can't crack it? Come, it's starting. The 21st stage is about to begin. This time, it's a third-grade divine rank array. At this moment, the merchant was also staring intently at the color-haired girl. Every time she saw the level, she would receive a reward. Moreover, the reward would be stacked from beginning to end. The reward for each level would be higher than the previous one. At the end of each level, she could choose not to continue. That way, she could leave with the reward. However, if she continued and couldn't solve the level, then the reward would be wiped out and she wouldn't get a single cent. This merchant was also using this game to make money. 10 gold coins per attempt, and the time limit was 1 hour. At the same time, people could also place bets on whether the person who broke the formation would be able to break the formation or not. No matter how many stages the person broke through, how much they collected in the end, or even if they didn't collect anything, the merchant would still make a profit. It was just a matter of how much he made. Yin Nuashing didn't care about how much money he earned. He was just here to play. For example, the reward for the 25 stages was as much as 1 million gold coins. That small merchant could still hold on to this reward. There were also many people placing bets around him. In fact, he didn't lose anything. Instead, he made a lot of money. Perhaps it was the psychology of people hunting for novelty. Every time they expected Yin Nuashing to lose, they would increase the amount of bets. In the end, he would smoothly pass every time. It might be a bit of a stretch to say that he was unrepentant, but that was what it meant. It was as if he had made up his mind to not leave until he saw Yin Nuashing lose. And they were destined to be disappointed for a long time, because Yin Nuashing's speed of breaking the formation was still as fast as ever. Yishi curled up in foam, Er's arms, and said softly, just based on Big Brother Nua's attainments and formations, coupled with the evil spirit eye, he can even break a 7th grade divine rank formation. This is too easy. When Xian and the others heard this, they also smiled slightly. If that merchant knew about Little Star's strength, they wondered if he would be blacklisted and not be allowed to play. But even if they didn't know earlier, they knew now. They didn't see any regrets from that merchant. Instead, they looked at Yin Nuashing with a smile and got people to collect the bets while they were at it. After a long time, when Yin Nuashing had broken a full 40 stages, his speed suddenly slowed down. The formation also jumped from 4th grade divine rank to 5th grade divine rank. This was a rather big hurdle. It could be seen from the fact that he had broken the formation so easily just now. But now, he needed to ponder for a while to break it. However, a mere 5th grade divine rank formation couldn't stop him. In less than 5 minutes, the gorgeous 5th grade divine rank formation shattered again. What followed was a wild clamor. That noise almost caused the entire street to collapse. I'm done playing. When he passed the 40th stage, Yin Nuashing let out a sigh of relief. Then, he shouted to the merchant, I'm tired. I'm done playing. Hearing this, the merchant chuckled and took out a purple gold card. He said, this is the reward for accumulating 40 stages. It's a total of 6 million. If you pass the next stage, this amount can be doubled. These words were very tempting, but if he didn't pass, the 6 million would be wasted. Yin Nuashing also knew this, but he didn't care about the 6 million. He was just tired. Yin Nuashing smiled and shook his head. He said, I'm done playing. I'm tired. Seeing him like this, the merchant was a little disappointed. He saw that Yin Nuashing was a little tired and knew that he was having a hard time. If Yin Nuashing couldn't pass the 41st stage, the 6 million would go directly into his pocket. Unfortunately, he met a player who knew how to stop. However, just the bets alone made me a net profit of 10 million. After deducting the 6 million, there's still 4 million. After a while, the Shang family member comforted himself in his heart for a while. Then, he chuckled and placed the purple gold card in Yin Nuashing's hand. He made a gesture of farewell, and the latter slowly left with Yin and the others. It's finally over. 40th stage. I lost so much tonight. I wonder where this little girl came from. She's such a young array master. TSK, TSK, TSK. Seeing Yin Nuashing and the others leave, The street was once again in an uproar. At the same time, many people sighed. Tonight was an eye-opener for them. They saw someone pass the 40th stage with their own eyes. They can boast about it for a while when they go back. They squeezed through the crowd and left the crowded street. They turned a corner and walked to another street that was equally lively. However, at this time, the people on this street seemed to have been attracted to the place where they came from. There were fewer people. Phew, the after-dinner activity is over. Do you still want to play? Yin Nuashing turned back with a smile, looked at Zian and the others, and said embarrassedly, he originally brought them out to have some fun, but he ended up playing alone. Well, Zian raised her head. Her jade-like finger touched her smooth chin. She pondered for a while. However, before she could say anything, a voice suddenly sounded from behind her. Moreover, the voice wasn't soft. Judging from the direction of the voice, it seemed to be directed at them. In front of me, beautiful little sisters like me. Wait a minute. When he heard these somewhat panicked words, Yin Nuashing paused for a moment. When he paused, the few girls also paused. They uniformly turned their heads around and saw a figure suddenly rushing out from the alley. When the slender figure rushed out, she bent her waist and held onto her knees as she panted. Due to the lighting, only half of her face could be vaguely seen. However, that half of her face caused Yin Nuashing, who was used to seeing beauties, to feel a sense of amazement that he had not felt for a long time. Yes, it has been a long time since he was stunned by other girls. Her eyebrows were like distant mountains, and under her slender eyelashes, her big eyes were clear and shining like obsidian. Her small nose was pointed, and her rosy little mouth was opening and closing as she gasped for breath. Her mouth was moist like jelly, and it made people want to take a bite. Her beautiful face was full of pink, and it seemed to ripple with a layer of faint fluorescence. Her voice was exceptionally clear and pleasant, and it even had a hint of playfulness. At first, Yin Nuashing thought that it was Yuder's tone. However, when he looked down, he saw a man's black clothes that wrapped around the girl's figure perfectly. Nothing could be seen, but just from her face, he could see that she was as beautiful as a fairy. When she smiled sweetly, it was hard for people to look away. Every frown and smile was filled with unconcealable temptation. To put it bluntly, she was so beautiful that she could bewitch all living things, or rather, bring disaster to the world. Yes, she was just like the people around him. She's probably in the top 10, right? Yin Nuashing couldn't help but mutter. Zian and the others turned their heads and whispered, "What's in the top 10? Yin Nuashing was stunned. Only then did he realize that he had accidentally said it. Then he whispered, "I said, based on appearance, she's in the top 10. Which 10? Zian suddenly asked curiously. Isn't it a little rude to say this? Yin Nuashing scratched his head embarrassedly. It was one thing to make it up, yes, but it was another thing to say it out loud. Just say it. It won't affect anything anyway, Zian whispered in his ear. Her breath was like orchids, and it made him shiver. Feng, and Little Bing Air also looked at him curiously. It was as if they would not forgive him if he didn't give them an accurate answer today. Seeing that the girls were so curious, Yin Nuashing's face turned bitter. He secretly scolded himself for talking nonsense. Then, he coughed dryly and said, "The rankings below are purely set by me. Yes. As for the first place, it's hard to say. I don't know if I should put your two girls, Xianyin, or..." He said something unpredictable as soon as he opened his mouth. As for the her, he was referring to the woman who looked like a saint and a demon. However, Zian and the others didn't know whether to laugh or cry, so he didn't even rank her. No wonder he only said that she was probably in the top 10. Seeing the strange expressions on the girls' faces, Yin Nuashing also coughed dryly and said, "It's not my fault. It's a sin to be beautiful. Yes, it's your sin. I won't take the blame for this. Forgive me for not being able to rank her specifically. Ahem. I can only say, sorry for bothering you. Goodbye." After saying that, he turned around and wanted to leave. However, before he could leave, Zian reached out and grabbed him. Then, she asked, "What about the others?" "There's her, who just came out." Then there's Bing Air, Chin Yin, Sister Yuan, Sister Jean, Sister Lioli, Qian Qian Yu Xiao. Well, I think you guys should just die together. At the end of his sentence, Yin Nuoxing's brain was about to explode. He felt that his brain wasn't enough. The faces of the girls kept spinning around in his mind, making him a little dizzy. Fisk, Xian, and Feng are both roll their eyes. Yin Nuoxing suddenly put his hands on his waist and said domineeringly, "Ahem, I've decided. I'll put myself first. World peace. That's right. Narcissistic little star. But this is a good choice." Xian covered her mouth and laughed. "Well, but I still like this one now." Very suddenly, Yin Nuoxing changed the topic, startling the girls. Then they saw that Yi Shi, who was hiding behind Yin Nuoxing and looking at the scenery, was inexplicably picked up by him. After Yi Shi was picked up, she also heard what Yin Nuoxing said. Her little face instantly became incomparably red, and her wine-red eyes shyly glared at him. She lowered her head and clutched her sleeves, not saying a word. "In the end, you still can't get rid of the Lullicon title. Fenger, we've lost." Seeing this scene, Xian didn't know whether to laugh or cry. She put her hand on Fenger's shoulder, not knowing whether to laugh or not. Fenger also nodded, a little speechless. "So what if I'm a Lullicon? Do you hate Lullicons? I'll go all out and say that I'm a Lullicon." Yin Nuoxing rolled his eyes, then reached out and pinched Yishi's little nose. He smiled and said, "Xiaoxi is so cute. She's so small and easy to raise." Yishi didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Her wine-red eyes glanced at Xian and the others, faintly showing a hint of pride, as if declaring her victory. Seeing this, Xian also pouted. But she also knew that although Yin Nuoxing liked Lullicons, it wasn't love between a man and a woman. It was probably just that he saw cute ones and liked them like a crazy person. Although, if things didn't go well, it might become true. While they were chatting idly, the girl had also finished catching her breath. She also heard what they said just now. She raised her head, and her clear obsidian eyes stared intently at Yin Nuoxing. She carefully said, "Hey, are you a man?" Hearing this, Yin Nuoxing and the others turned to look at him. He shrugged helplessly and nodded. When the girl saw him nod, she also looked at him in shock. Mei Mao's eyes flashed with amazement. She couldn't help but say, "She's actually as pretty as me, ahem." After saying this, the girl regretted it and hurriedly tried to cover it up. But when she saw that Yin Nuoxing didn't react, she calmed down and then asked softly, "What's your name?" Yin Nuoxing hesitated for a moment, not really wanting to say his name. But when he saw the girl's serious gaze, he still said, "For now, you just need to know that my surname is Yun. Stingy, you don't even want to sign up." Hearing this, the girl raised her eyebrows, then put her hands on her hips and said very calmly, "Listen carefully. My name is Chu Yingzhan. I specially allow you to call me Fairy Chu." Chu Yingzhan wasn't too surprised by Yin Nuoxing's admission. She had been watching Yin Nuoxing break through the arrays and pass level 40. It was normal for him to have such ability. Although she didn't understand why Yin Nuoxing, who looked like he was only 16 years old, was at the level of a magic array grandmaster, it was fine as long as she knew that he had it. "Why?" Yin Nuoxing looked at her in amusement and asked. Why? I don't know why either. Anyway, I just want you to do me a favor. There will be a reward. How about it?" Chu Yingzhan grinned, revealing a row of pearly white teeth. Her smile was extremely bright, like a fairy, and the street suddenly lost its color. "Tell me what you need help with first. I don't want to attract trouble for no reason," Yin Nuoxing said. "Yes, it's like this. Tomorrow, there will be a small gathering in the south of Burning Flame City. Someone will bring an extremely complicated array tool. It's said that even some of the magic array grandmasters in Burning Flame City can't decipher the arrays on it. However, this matter seems to involve something else. At that gathering, someone will take out the array tool and invite everyone to decipher it," Chu Yingzhan said. "It doesn't sound like anything good, nor is it a good job," Yin Nuoxing said nonchalantly with his hands in his pockets. "Hee hee, but I'm very curious. I've been cooped up here for 2 months. Every small gathering, that array tool will be taken out. I really want to know what that array tool is used for." Chu Yingzhan pouted, then stretched out a jade-white palm and smiled. "If Star-Lord Nuashing can help me decipher it, I'll give you a divine grade 5 array. How about it?" Yin Nuashing was slightly shocked. He looked at Chu Yingzhan with his colorful eyes and could not help but have a different feeling. She could even use a divine grade 5 array as a bargaining chip. It seemed that this girl was not simple. Demigod rank 8. She looks to be around 18. On the surface, she's about the same age as this girl, but in reality, she's not much older. She's at most 100 years old. To be able to achieve this at this age, she must have a perfect inheritance and guidance. Her background is probably not simple, Yin Nuashing thought to himself. After a while, Yin Nuashing sighed and shook his head. A divine grade 5 array tool was quite tempting, but he did not lack it. Unless it was a divine grade 7 or 8 array tool, he might be able to move his body. Oh, why? Is divine grade 5 not enough? Seeing him shake his head, the girl was a little anxious. She jumped on the spot for a while, then gritted her teeth and said, "Then divine grade 6. Yin Nuashing looked at her speechlessly. He sighed and shook his head. He did not really want to move, so forget it. Despicable fellow. Then divine grade 7. Divine grade 7 array tool. I think that as long as you're a formation master, you won't be able to reject it, right?" Chu Yingzhan was so anxious that she was about to cry. "I beg you, just do me a small favor. If you think it's not enough, there will be other compensations after this. Even if you mention the ceiling array, I don't want to go. Listen carefully. It's a matter of whether I want to or not a matter of compensation." Yin Nuashing shrugged helplessly. He looked at the night sky and sighed. "Let's go back. It's late. Fairy Chu, rest early. We'll be leaving first." With that, he waved his hand and led Xian and the others back to their shop, leaving Chu Yingzhan alone in a daze. After a while, seeing that Yin Nuashing and the others had disappeared from her sight, Chu Yingzhan rubbed her black hair, not knowing whether to laugh or cry. She could not help but mutter, "What a strange fellow. He's not even tempted by a divine grade 7 array tool. Stingy, stingy. Ah, I curse you to lose sleep tonight." After muttering to herself for a while, she seemed to know that there was nothing she could do no matter how much she complained. She could only grimace and walk towards the end of the street. She kept muttering, "How can I open that thing?" In the mansion, Yin Nuashing sat on the sofa in the hall and stretched. Xian had brewed a pot of tea and was resting when he suddenly asked, "Why did Little Star refuse?" "Why? I just don't want to go. There's no other reason. I just don't want to go. If I want to go, don't talk about rank 7 or rank 6. Just take me there. If I don't want to go, throw me a godly restriction formation." Yin Nuashing paused, then smiled and said, "Then I might really go." "Yeah, I thought you would say that you won't go." Xian looked at him with a smile. "Cough. As for the value of a divine restriction array, even if I don't want to, I still have to give it a try." Yeah. Yin Nuashing shrugged with a smile. "To put it bluntly, I didn't throw you enough chips to overcome your laziness." Yishi took a sip of tea, then moved her little butt and sat between Yin Nuashing's legs. She looked up at him and said with a smile, "Brother Nua, you really don't have any principles." "Cough, what are you talking about?" Yin Nuashing blushed and rubbed her little head. The next morning, Yin Nuashing and the others sat in the shop and flipped through the books in their hands in boredom. The interspatial ring was placed on the table, waiting for the young man to come and take it. Although they didn't know when the young man would come, they still had to wake up early as they were doing business. They knew that no one would come to the shop. However, what surprised him was that although no one entered the shop, he could clearly see that many people were looking at the empty shop. He didn't know if they were looking at the people or the shop sign. After the incident with the young man, many people knew that there were several beautiful women in the shop, which made them even more curious. Although they didn't enter the shop to do business, it was good to sneak a few peeks through the door. Looking at the few women in the shop, they were all quietly reading books. The atmosphere was harmonious and tranquil. Such a scene could only be found in heaven. However, very quickly, this peaceful atmosphere was broken. A young man hurriedly rushed into the shop, causing Yun Nuoshing and the rest to turn their gazes. When he saw the person who had arrived, Yun Nuoshing nodded his head. He pushed the ring forward and said, "All 8 of your array tools have been repaired. The cost of the materials is a total of 500,000. Do you need change?" The person who came was the young man. Looking at his hurried expression, no one knew why he was in such a hurry. After hearing Yun Nuoshing's words, the young man was stunned for a while. After a while, he widened his eyes and asked, "They're all repaired?" After saying that, he reached out and took the interspatial ring. When he looked at the items inside, the shock on his face became even more exaggerated. After a long time, he came back to his senses and laughed dryly. "No need, no need. Take the extra as an extra fee for young lady. I have a big business here. I wonder if young lady is interested in it?" The young man smiled at the door. This time, he didn't dare to look around casually like last time. After knowing Yun Nuoshing's ability, he also knew the power that she had. Not to mention that he couldn't afford to offend a grandmaster blacksmith. Even the people behind him didn't want to provoke her. It was better to be careful. "Speak," Yun Nuoshing said concisely. "There's no harm in telling you that we bought these things from the black market. Due to the fact that they're tattered, they're not worth much. However, the small bell that you repaired last time is a key, and we guess that it might be related to the Sky Illusion mountain range. There are a total of 2 keys, and the other key is sealed by a powerful magic formation." The young man paused for a moment before he continued. "Young lady, since you can repair the magic formation so easily, your attainments in magic formations must be very high, so, of course, we won't let you suffer a loss in this business. If the Sky Illusion mountain range is successfully opened, the Dragon Shadow Chamber of Commerce will enter to explore. The heaven and earth treasures and some other items that we find will total 10%. No, 20%. We'll give them to you, young lady. If they're not valuable enough, we'll find other items as compensation. What do you think?" The young man suggested with a smile. "The Dragon Shadow Chamber of Commerce? Can you make a decision on behalf of your Chamber of Commerce?" Yun Nuoshing looked up at him with her colorful eyes and asked, "I can. I'm the person in charge of the Burning Flame City branch of the Dragon Shadow Chamber of Commerce. Burning Flame City is the closest to the Sky Illusion mountain range, so I'm basically in charge of this matter." The young man clasped his hands together and said, "Let me introduce myself. I'm Yang Qian. My father is the president of the Dragon Shadow Chamber of Commerce. Even in Heavenly Fate City, which is the center of the Ganyuan region, I have a certain amount of influence." The Sky Illusion mountain range? Yun Nuoshing pondered for a moment. She wasn't too sure about the names of these places, nor did she know what was inside the Sky Illusion mountain range. However, since 2 keys were used to seal it, there should be something inside. She didn't completely believe Yang Qian's words, so she decided to trust him a little first. "All right, let's go take a look." Yun Nuoshing casually closed the book with both hands and raised her head in response. She then said to Xian and the others, "Let's go. There's work to be done." Xian and the others smiled faintly when they heard this. They stood up with him and walked outside. Seeing this, Yang Qian hurriedly followed behind and led the way. After flying for half a day in the Burning Flame City, Yang Qian brought Yun Nuoshing and the others to a 2-story loft. This loft even had a rather large manor attached to it. The size of this manor could probably be ranked among the top in the Burning Flame City. The status of the owner was probably as extraordinary as this place. At this moment, there were many people walking in and out of this manor. They were dressed luxuriously and were all people of prominent status in the Burning Flame City. Furthermore, they seemed to be very familiar with this place and seemed to have been here many times. This loft. Is this a formation artifact? Yun Nuoshing's gaze suddenly flashed as she stared at the loft. The astonishment in her eyes became slightly more intense. She felt a trace of familiar energy from the 2-story loft. This loft was not a building, but was formed by a formation artifact. This is a formation artifact of the Dragon Shadow Chamber of Commerce. Compared to a mobile palace, it is more convenient to carry around. Furthermore, there is a space array inside that can change the size of the space. Therefore, this loft is not as small as it looks on the surface. Seeing the astonishment in Yun Nuoxing's eyes, Yang Qian was a little proud. Then, he said, "This is the main venue for today. We have arrived at just the right time. Please." Yang Qian waved his hand and gestured towards the door of the loft. He smiled at Yun Nuoxing and led the way into the loft. The latter and the others followed closely behind. Just as they stepped into the loft, Yun Nuoxing and the others could clearly feel a faint spatial fluctuation around them. Their vision blurred for a moment before it became clear again. Only then did they see the interior of the loft clearly. The loft was filled with crystals, and the light that shone from them made the place extremely bright. Even the ground was covered with a layer of dazzling crystals. Although there were many people standing in the huge hall, it did not seem crowded at all. Instead, it seemed a little spacious. Yun Nuoxing walked into the hall and subconsciously looked around. She exclaimed softly. Such an exquisite building was rare. Even those high-class palaces could not be compared to it. Seeing them pause, Yang Qian also paused slightly. However, he did not stay for long. He walked to the side and softly said a few words to the attendant standing at the side. It seemed like he was arranging something. At first glance, it looked like a banquet. In fact, it was more or less the same. If Yang Qian had not explained his purpose earlier, Yun Nuoxing would have thought that he had simply dragged them over to attend the banquet. Looking up, the people in the hall were gathered in twos and threes. Other than some gods, Yun Nuoxing also discovered many young experts. Most of them were at the peak of the demon level or the demigod level. Most of the people who came are forces from the Burning Flame City. Brother Nuo, you don't have to worry. Even if you cause a ruckus here, I reckon that no one will be able to recognize you. Yishi smiled and tugged at Yun Nuoxing's hand. Yun Nuoxing did not care much about these things. Hence, she had to pay more attention to them. In just 2 days, she had figured out all the major forces in the Burning Flame City. Yun Nuoxing lowered her head and smiled as she rubbed Yishi's head. She did not have any other intentions. Seeing that Yang Qian was still talking about something, she was about to find a secluded place to stand. However, she heard a familiar, surprised voice from not far away. You despicable fellow, didn't you say that you weren't coming?" Yun Nuoxing turned her head in shock. She saw a young lady dressed in men's clothes standing at the entrance looking at her in shock. She was even running towards them with her slender legs. The young lady's surprised voice attracted the attention of some people. However, when they saw the source of the voice, they smiled and looked away. It turned out that it was this reckless girl. She had been here a few times. It was not strange that she would appear this time. When Yun Nuoxing saw that she was here, she did not react in time. Could it be that the place that Yang Qian brought them to was the gathering that the young lady mentioned? At this moment, Chu Yingzhan rushed to Yun Nuoxing's side with a head full of confusion and surprise. She suddenly stretched out her hand and grabbed his shoulder. He was shocked. Before he could struggle, the young lady suddenly pressed down on his shoulder and swung him. "Do you know how disappointed I was when you said that you weren't coming yesterday? I stood alone in the cold wind for a few minutes. I couldn't sleep last night and was almost hit by a carriage when I went out. Why are you here? I didn't tell you the location." Chu Yingzhan shook him vigorously. Her cherry lips opened and closed as she spat out a series of crisp sounds. Yun Nuoxing, who was being shaken until he was half dead, was completely confused. "Could it be that you deliberately rejected me and found your way here to give me a surprise? Despicable fellow." After shaking for a long time, Chu Yingzhan finally stopped her movements and abruptly let go of her hand. Yun Nuoxing was also thrown straight into Zi Yan's embrace. Looking at Zi Yan's dazzling appearance, Chu Yingzhan couldn't help but pout her little mouth and lightly snorted. Seeing that he was still dizzy after being tormented with great difficulty, Zi Yan laughed in schadenfreude. She rubbed his temples with her jade-like hands and slowly calmed his dizziness. "What are you talking about? Narcissistic girl? I was asked to come here today. I didn't know that this was the gathering you were talking about." Yun Nuoxing smiled bitterly and shook his head. This girl shook him so much that he almost vomited bile. "That's all." Chu Yingzhan blinked her large eyes and looked at him pitifully. That's all. Yin Nuoxing nodded in annoyance. Tisich. Hearing this, Chu Yingzhan could not help but pout. A hint of disappointment flashed across her eyes. Yin Nuoxing smiled bitterly. What are you looking forward to? But that's fine too. Since you're here, do something for this fairy. The reward still counts. Yes, yes. A moment later, Chu Yingzhan reached out and grabbed Yin Nuoxing's wrist without saying anything and pulled him forward. Yin Nuoxing had a strange expression on his face. Xian and the others also helplessly followed closely behind. Chapter 751. Hey, Yang Qian. Chu Yingzhan dragged Yin Nuoxing over to Yang Qian, who was talking to someone else, and called out briskly. Yang Qian seemed to be in the middle of discussing matters regarding the gathering when he was interrupted by a shout. This familiar voice caused his heart to thump loudly as he hurriedly raised his head. As expected, he saw Chu Yingzhan swiftly walking over with her long legs, causing him to involuntarily let out a dry laugh. Chu Yingzhan was also a beautiful woman, comparable to Xian and the others. Furthermore, she had her own unique charm. To Yang Qian, who liked to admire beauties, this was definitely an opportunity to feast his eyes. However, when Yang Qian saw this young lady who couldn't pretend to have the aura of a rich young lady, his expression became a little dazed. He seemed a little helpless and a little fearful. Fairy Chu, why are you here again? Yang Qian rubbed his hands and looked at Chu Yingzhan with uncertain eyes. Hearing Yang Qian's extremely reluctant words, Yin Nuoxing also looked at Chu Yingzhan strangely. What did this fellow do to make others so unnatural? Hearing this somewhat reluctant voice, Chu Yingzhan pursed her lips and snorted softly. Why, am I not welcome? Welcome, of course I welcome you. Everyone who comes is a guest. There are no restrictions on the gathering. Anyone who is interested can come. Yang Qian rubbed his hands and hurriedly said. In the end, he added a sentence in his heart. The prerequisite is that you don't make a fuss every time you come and cause a ruckus at the gathering. If it were anyone else who caused such trouble at his gathering, he would have chased them away. However, although this mysterious young lady was a little too noisy and lively, she didn't seem to bring any special trouble to others. Instead, she livened up the atmosphere of the gathering. Moreover, many people liked this overly lively young lady. Only then did he resist the urge to chase her away. Moreover, he couldn't figure out this young lady's background. He only felt that she had great power. I'm not going to talk about this with you. Take out that that lousy box of yours. Chu Yingzhan waved her hand and said, Young lady, that's an 8 trigrams box. At least it looks like an 8 trigrams box on the outside. It's not a lousy box. I've already said it 3 times. Yang Qian didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Although he was muttering, he still walked into the room obediently. If he didn't agree, who knew what kind of trouble this little ancestor would cause? However, many people liked this beautiful young lady. And even if Yang Qian was from the Dragon Shadow Merchant Guild, many people would probably speak up for her. In short, he would be at a disadvantage if he didn't agree. Not long after, Yang Qian returned with a palm-sized 8 trigrams box in his hand. The box was brownish-black in color and was only an inch thin. There was nothing special about it, and it seemed to be a small wooden box. Other than the 8 trigrams carved on the surface of the box, there was nothing special about it. Before he could hand it over, Chu Yingzhan extended her hand and grabbed it. Without saying anything, she stuffed it into Yin Nuoxing's hand and said, Here, it's this. Open it. At this moment, Yang Qian finally noticed Yin Nuoxing behind Chu Yingzhan. He couldn't help but be stunned. He didn't express anything about the latter receiving the box. She had invited him over to study this thing. However, he was curious. When did Yin Nuoxing get to know this crazy girl? Do you think this is like picking a lock that can be unlocked just like that? Yin Nuoxing glared at Chu Yingzhan in annoyance and muttered. Then he slowly opened his evil spirit eye and looked at the palm-sized box in his hand. He looked into the 8 trigrams box. Then, an extremely large and complicated array diagram rushed into his eyes. With just a glance, it caused his mind to ripple for an instant. In the wide array of azure arrays, hundreds and thousands of arrays seemed to be connected together through some kind of power. The power of the arrays resonated and spread out a terrifying power that shocked him. In front of that power, his spiritual strength was as insignificant as a speck of dust. With just a glance, his spiritual strength retreated. Yin Nuoxing hurriedly closed his evil spirit eye. He could feel that his eyes were a little hot. This was a warning from overloading. At the same time, it also reminded him that this wasn't something he could look at right now. I can't undo it. Yin Nuoxing sighed helplessly, seeing that he had come to such an answer with just a glance. Yang Qian and Chu Yingjian were both stunned. The latter frowned and was about to speak, thinking that he was just being perfunctory. However, after thinking about it, perhaps because they weren't too familiar with each other and there was no need to hide it, she closed her mouth again. At first, Yang Qian also thought that Yin Nuoxing had just casually glanced at it. However, he clearly caught a trace of surprise from Yin Nuoxing's face. It was the same surprise as those array masters who had seen it before, except that Yin Nuoxing wasn't as surprised. Although I'm not too sure about the grade of the arrays in this 8 trigrams box, I can guarantee that they are definitely above the 8th grade of the divine rank, Yin Nuoxing said helplessly. Hearing that, Yang Qian also smiled bitterly. The 8th grade of the divine rank was at the level of a great grandmaster. Even if he used all the wealth of the Dragon Shadow Chamber of Commerce branch that he managed, he probably wouldn't be able to invite them. That was already a legendary figure. Fisk, if Uncle Long was here, there should be a way. I'm so annoyed. Chu Yingjian tugged at her hair in vexation as she stared at the 8 trigrams box, unwilling to give up. Seeing the expressions on their faces, Yin Nuoxing rolled his eyes and suddenly smiled. Well, although I can't undo it, I know someone who can definitely undo it. It's just that. Yang Qian and Chu Yingjian were stunned. It seemed that there was still hope. As for the just, they knew what he was referring to. The person who could undo the array was probably a great grandmaster array master. Unless it was someone they were familiar with, the reward for inviting someone of that level to help would be quite a lot. Is an 8th grade divine rank array scroll possible? Before Yang Qian could say anything, Chu Yingjian hurriedly spoke up. Her impatience made the former smile bitterly. She wasn't trying to share his burden. She was just anxious. Moreover, to be honest, he might not be able to pay such a high price. As a result, he was shocked when he heard Chu Yingjian say such a high price without any hesitation. An 8th grade divine rank array was priceless. Even if there were records, it wasn't something that ordinary people could obtain. Well, that's fine too. Yin Nuoxing scratched his head before turning around and rubbing Yishi's head. He placed the 8 trigrams box in her hand and smiled. Xiaoxi, I'll leave it to you. Yang Qian and Chu Yingjian were both stunned when they saw him hand the 8 trigrams box to the youngest girl. It was actually this little girl. She didn't seem to be around 10 years old. She was the array master who could solve it. Yishi ignored the two of them and glanced at Yin Nuoxing. She sighed helplessly and nodded. However, she didn't start immediately. Instead, she looked at Yang Qian and said indifferently, 30% of the items in the Sky Illusion Mountains. The increase in price made Yang Qian's heart skip a beat. After thinking for a moment, he gritted his teeth and nodded. All right. If they couldn't solve it, then everything would be empty talk. They might even have to find an array master, and the price would be no less than 30%. Yin Nuoxing was also rather surprised by Yishi's increase in price. While he was still wondering if she knew something, Yishi had already lowered her head and held the 8 trigrams box with both hands. Crack! Just as Yin Nuoxing was about to go drink a cup of tea, before he could turn around, a clear sound suddenly rang out, causing him to be startled. He turned around again, only to see she slowly opening the 8 trigrams box, after which she took out a small hammer that was only the size of a finger. Even the hammer head was only the size of a fingernail. Here, Yishi handed the small hammer over. Yang Qian was still a little stunned when he took the small hammer. She took it out just like that. It only took an instant, right? Ah, it's this small hammer. I've been looking forward to it for more than 2 months. I've wasted more than 2 months, and all I get to see is this lousy thing? Chu Yingxian nonchalantly snatched the small hammer from Yang Qian's hands. After looking at it, Mei Mao's eyes were filled with disappointment. She then casually tossed it to Yang Qian. She glanced at Yang Qian, who caught it in a fluster. With a wave of her hand, she took out a scroll. Chu Yingxian gently caressed the scroll, and a trace of heartache flashed across her eyes. She gritted her teeth and stuffed the scroll into Yun Nuoxing's arms. She said unwillingly, "I'll give it to you. I'll give it to you. It's an 8th grade divine level array. Seriously, what a loss. After all this time, it's just this lousy thing. I'm going to die of a loss." Hearing this, Yun Nuoxing didn't know whether to laugh or cry. "Didn't you call out the price yourself? You'll feel heartache when it's time to pay." However, Yun Nuoxing was also a little surprised when he saw her give it away so readily. He thought that she would ask the faction behind her to send it over after some time. He didn't expect her to have it with her. He thought that she might be an array master herself. "Well, since you're the one who said it, it would be impolite of me to refuse." Yun Nuoxing tossed the scroll up and down with a smile before putting it away in her pendant. Chu Yingxian pursed her lips. Yang Qian also felt a little apologetic when he saw her dejected appearance. After some thought, he said, "Our Dragon Shadow Merchant Guild will be heading to the Sky Illusion Mountain Range tomorrow. Would you like to come along?" "Can I come along?" Chu Yingxian raised her head. Although she responded, she didn't seem to be too interested. She didn't seem to be very interested. "This small hammer should be the last key. You've done us a small favor, so it's no big deal to bring one more person. Of course, it won't be a problem if you ladies want to come along," Yang Qian said with a smile. His last sentence was naturally directed at Yun Nuoxing and the others. "What kind of place is that?" Yun Nuoxing asked curiously. Yang Qian pondered for a moment before saying, "Yes. If you insist, it should be a large secret realm or a small world." "Should be." Yang Qian nodded. "Amen. It should be a sealed region. I don't know what it's like inside, but we've read about the Sky Illusion Mountain Range in a document. It's 100,000 kilometers wide and is sealed off by a barrier. However, it's a little too big to call it a secret realm, so we believe it should be a sealed small world. However, we don't know what happened, but it's connected to the God Realm and just happened to fill in the Sky Illusion Mountain Range. A small world can cover a place in the God Realm?" Yun Nuoxing was a little surprised when she heard this. Could it be that the so-called cover was directly replacing a region? It should be directly overlapping the land of the small world with the earth of the God Realm, Yishi said slowly. Yun Nuoxing turned around and saw Yishi stretch out 2 small white hands from her wide sleeves, one above the other, palms facing each other. Then, she slowly put her hands together. Just like this, the sky of the small world will merge with the God Realm, and the land of the small world will be replaced by the God Realm. But we'll only know the details after we go there. We haven't been there before, so we don't know what's going on, Yishi said softly. Go. Bring me along. I want to see what's going on too." At this moment, Chu Yingxian seemed to come back to her senses. She quickly raised her hand and shouted excitedly, "When? Now. Let's go now." Yang Qian was a little speechless. He sighed and smiled bitterly. "We'll leave tomorrow. Fairy Chu, don't be in a hurry. Go back and make some preparations. We'll leave early tomorrow morning. Let's meet at the east gate of Burning Flame City." Chapter 752. The next morning, Yun Nuoxing woke up from his sleep. He stopped circulating the 1,000 Dream Heart Sutra, but the other Xian techniques continued to circulate at a constant speed. The cultivation speed of several Xian techniques was very fast. There was even a vacuum around him. The energy there had been completely absorbed, leaving not a single bit behind. Seeing that the sky had suddenly appeared, he planned to get up and spend a few minutes waking up the girls. He then washed up and casually ate breakfast before heading out. Yang Qian didn't say what time he would arrive in the morning. In short, it wasn't a problem to go early. Yun Nuoxing let out a long breath for a while, stretched, and lazily sat up from the bed. When he saw that Xian and the others weren't around and seemed to have woken up early, he was stunned for a moment. However, he didn't stay in a daze for too long. He turned over and got off the bed. Suddenly, he was stunned. A tight feeling came from his body. If he had to describe it, it was the tight feeling on his palms, forearms, and legs. This made him curiously lower his head, and then his pretty face instantly turned a little dark. At this moment, he had unknowingly changed into a new set of clothes. He was wearing a light purple dress and white jade-like gloves that wrapped around his forearms. There was even a beautiful flower beside the gloves. Furthermore, he was wearing long knee-length socks. Even his charming face was adorned with light makeup. His sparkling and translucent jade-like face and colorful hair were curled into the shape of a lotus flower. If he were to strike a pose at this moment, he would probably be mesmerizing to death. A few black lines drooped down Yun Nuoxing's forehead. After a moment, he bitterly sighed and reached out to take off the gloves. However, to his astonishment, no matter how hard he tried, the gloves seemed to be stuck to his forearms. Even if he could pull at the end, he couldn't take them off. What the hell? Yun Nuoxing didn't know whether to laugh or cry. If he couldn't take off the gloves, then he took off the socks. However, not only the knee-length socks, even the dress on his body couldn't be taken off. It felt as if it was sewn to his body. The black windbreaker that was casually thrown at the head of the bed was also kept by someone. "Little star, you're awake?" A stifled laughter came from the door. The owner of the voice seemed to have just laughed out loud. At this moment, he was forcefully holding back his laughter as he pushed the door open and entered. Yun Nuoxing looked speechlessly at Zian, who had just walked in, and said angrily, "Girl, I have something to say." "Okay, go ahead." Zian smiled and sat down next to him. She even rubbed his pretty face with her jade-like hands. "Forget about the cross-dressing thing. You won't be able to take it off in half a month. The four of us are all criminals." Yun Nuoxing opened his mouth, but before he could say anything, he heard Zian turn himself in and confess his accomplices. He was speechless instantly. So it was not only him and Feng, but even Xiaoxi and Bing Er were involved. What could he say? Curse. It seemed like he couldn't bear to. But if he didn't say anything, what would happen in the future? The problem was, how should he say it? "Forget it. I can't be bothered to argue with you. Don't mess around in the future. You're always fiddling with these things while I'm sleeping. Do you really think I'm a doll?" Yun Nuoxing sighed in distress, not knowing what to say. "Yeah, I think you're a doll. I couldn't help myself when I saw Little Star sleeping." Zian smiled and stuck out her tongue. Then she said, "Don't worry, I've seen what I shouldn't see. Don't mind these little details." Yun Nuoxing was shocked by her words. He subconsciously clamped his legs together. When did this girl become a female gangster? Let's go. Xiaoxi and Feng are waiting outside." Zian smiled mischievously. Her pretty face blushed imperceptibly. Then she dragged Yun Nuoxing, who had turned into Fairy Yun, or rather, Yusin, and jogged outside. However, the latter's eyes were dull, as if she had been played with. In the courtyard, Feng, and the other two girls were sitting on the stone bench in the courtyard. When they saw Yun Nuoxing being pulled out, they couldn't help but laugh. This laughter immediately made Yun Nuoxing, who was absent-minded, come back to his senses. Seeing the smiling faces of the three girls, he fiercely gritted his teeth and said fiercely, "Just you wait." Then they left the courtyard with their tails between their legs. Yun Nuoxing sighed bitterly. "To be honest, the sins I've committed in my life are starting to bite me. What can I do? I'm also in despair. What a sin." As soon as Yun Nuoxing came out of the courtyard, he saw a somewhat unexpected person. When the person saw him, she looked at Zian and the other girls behind him, then fixed her eyes on him. Suddenly, she laughed loudly. Her laughter was like the sound of silver bells, crisp and pleasant, but it made Yun Nuoxing's face even darker. "Haha, young Master Yun. Oh no, Fairy Yun, huh? This time, it's the real Fairy Yun. You're as beautiful as me." The person who came was naturally Chu Yingxian. Yun Nuoxing didn't know why she appeared at the door, but at this moment, he was too lazy to pay attention to it. Just her laughter alone was enough to throw all other thoughts out of his mind. Then, he glared at her fiercely. Unexpectedly, Chu Yingxian laughed even more happily when she saw his expression. Her pretty face was so delicate that it didn't look angry at all. Instead, it looked like she was acting coquettishly, which made him want to play with her. She raised her jade-like hand and hooked Yun Nuoxing's chin. She said with a smile, "Fairy Yun, would you do me the honor of drinking with this young master?" Yun Nuoxing was angry, but he couldn't vent it. He didn't have a place to vent it. After a long while, Chu Yingzhan set off with Yun Nuoxing and the others. She had already found out where Yun Nuoxing and the others were staying yesterday, so she ran over here early in the morning to wait for them. After hearing Xian explain the whole situation, her laughter became even more unrestrained. "Remember to call me next time. I'll come too. She even excitedly said that if they were going to put on makeup for Yun Nuoxing, count her in too. Okay. Then, Xian also agreed readily. Yun Nuoxing sadly felt that sooner or later, he would be ruined by these girls. By the time they reached the east of the city, half an hour had already passed. It was mainly because Chu Yingzhan was beside him. Yun Nuoxing couldn't use the light element, but the speed of the group wasn't slow either. Although he was only the second seal of the demon rank, the girls beside him were 3 gods. One was at the peak of the demon rank, and the other was at the demigod rank. All of them looked stronger than him, so naturally, their speed wouldn't be slow either. In the suburbs of the east of the city, Yang Qian and the others were already there. There were also a few youths that they had seen that day. Moreover, from the looks of it, they seemed to have just come out of the city gate. There were also some people wearing the robes of the Dragon Shadow Shang clan, following them from the city gate. They seemed to have just arrived too. The few of them descended from the sky. Yang Qian's gaze immediately turned and landed on Yun Nuoxing and the others. After a glance, he hurriedly looked away and smiled faintly. "Fairy Chu, Fairy Yun is also here. Since everyone is here, it's about time to set off." This time, there were a total of 30 people on Yang Qian's side, including the youths, and 5 people on Yun Nuoxing's side. In addition, there were also Chu Yingzhan, who had already started chatting with Xian and the other girls. There were a total of 36 people. As for the things that they had prepared, such as dry rations and tents, they had all been prepared. Whether they would be used or not was another matter. The Sky Fantasy Mountains were 10,000 miles away from the Burning Flames city. Furthermore, within 10,000 miles of the Sky Fantasy Mountains, there was only one Burning Flames city. The others either happened to avoid this region or disappeared in history. This time, we will announce to the public that we are going to the Lingyu Canyon to train. Let's keep a low profile. It's always better if fewer people know about this for the time being. Yang Qian looked around the group and then said, Hearing this, everyone roared in response. The roar caused Yang Qian to stagger and almost fall. He hurriedly roared, "Hey! Didn't you say to keep a low profile?" A series of loud laughter came from the crowd, causing Yang Qian to feel a little helpless. He tidied his robes, then waved his hand and took the lead to soar into the sky. The others behind him followed closely behind. The distance of 10,000 miles was not considered very long for Yang Qian and Yun Nuoxing's group. They did not need to use a few magical beasts as transportation. However, just getting there alone would take 1 or 2 days, even if there was a large group involved. If something happened along the way, it would not take more than 2 days, unless they were fooling around on the way. A demon rank expert could travel 10,000 miles in a day. The strength of these 36 people was also quite good. Other than Yun Nuoxing, Yang Qian and the 6 youths were demigod rank 3 or 4. Chu Yingzhan was demigod rank 8, and most of the others were above demon rank 6 seals. Moreover, the strongest was a godson expert, who seemed to be here to protect Yang Qian. Of course, this was under the circumstance that Yun Nuoxing's group was not included. Otherwise, there would be an Emperor God expert leading the group. After walking for 12 to 14 hours, the sky unknowingly darkened. Yang Qian took out a map and glanced at it. He secretly calculated the distance in his heart. After flying for another hour, he took the lead and landed on a flat, open ground. He glanced at the surroundings. This place was surrounded by vigorous green trees and could be considered a relatively hidden place. He looked around for a long time before saying, "Let's set up camp here today. It's less than 1,000 miles away from the Sky Illusion mountain range. We will enter early tomorrow morning." Everyone nodded and did not object. They each found a good spot to set up camp. Other than those who chose to set up camp, a portion of them simply sat cross-legged on the trees to cultivate while being vigilant of their surroundings. As for Yun Nuoxing and the others, they strolled in the forest. Chu Yingxian could not help but follow them. When Yang Qian saw them, he did not say anything. Their group was each more mysterious than the other, especially that 10-year-old girl. She was an array grandmaster. Even her father would have to be polite to her when he saw her. He did not bring anyone else from the Dragon Shadow Chamber of Commerce for this exploration. It could be said that he acted on his own. This was not because he was eager for quick success. He was equivalent to an advance party. It was better to explore first. When the situation stabilized and he felt that there was a need to call for reinforcements, he would inform the other experts in the Dragon Shadow Chamber of Commerce. The time of the god expert was very precious. Before Yang Qian figured out the situation, he was unwilling to act casually. Yang Qian, in the blink of an eye, where did those fairies go? At this moment, those few youths walked out of the forest slowly. They had just gone to clean up the demonic beasts in the forest. In the end, they did not see anything after walking around. Furthermore, the atmosphere in the forest was a little dull, which made them feel uncomfortable. What's wrong? You're thinking of seducing those fairies? Don't blame me for not reminding you, but there's a formation grandmaster in their group. The other key to the Sky Illusion mountain range was unlocked by that grandmaster. Yang Qian looked up at the carefree young man with a grin on his face. Grandmaster? That has to be above the 8th stage of the divine level. Don't brag. They are only in their 20s. How could they? That carefree youth blinked, then laughed and shook his head. He stared at Yang Qian and said. However, when he saw Yang Qian's extremely serious gaze, he was stunned. Could it be that you are not joking? That carefree youth scratched his head awkwardly. The few youths beside him also looked at each other in disbelief. They really did not want to believe it, but they had known Yang Qian for so long and knew that he would not speak without thinking. Could it be that it was true? Now, if you feel that you are lucky, you can go and flirt with him. Yang Qian said with a smile that was not a smile. Didn't they see that he was self-aware and did not go and flirt with them? These guys were really thick-skinned. If one were to say who liked women the most in this group, it would be Yang Qian. At this moment, even a veteran in the field of love like him had silently stopped. It was obvious that there was a problem. Cough. If that's the case, won't it be very dangerous to bring them along? The carefree youth coughed dryly and muttered, "We only have one god-level expert on this trip. If they have that kind of strength and want to do something, then we can only blame ourselves for being unlucky." Yang Qian was also a little helpless. He sighed and said, "Well, they were the ones who unlocked the key. According to the agreement, I do have to bring them along if they want to come. However, even if we send reinforcements, we probably won't be able to deal with that grandmaster. We can only save it. It's good that you didn't become an unscrupulous merchant. Can't we really not call for reinforcements before we find out the situation clearly?" Another youth who looked very indifferent said, "Those who can enter the Chamber of Commerce, unless they are guards, are all unscrupulous merchants. For example, Mikov. We won't act without seeing the hair. This time, we came out to explore first. We can only be honest people and play some tricks. I haven't lived long enough. If that master moves his finger, we will all be wiped out." Yang Qian coughed dryly. The few youths also smiled bitterly. It seemed that this was right. At night, Yun Nuoxing brought the few of them to walk casually in the forest. Xian and the others did not care about anything. They chatted happily with Chu Yingxian. It was peaceful along the way. The forest was unusually quiet. Even some magic beasts that were active at night did not seem to move. Gradually, Chu Yingxian felt that something was wrong. Yun Nuoxing seemed to be walking casually, but he seemed to be looking for something. This made her feel uneasy. She said weakly, "Hey, where are you going? Don't tell me you want to find a remote place to kidnap me and sell me." Yin Nuoxing stopped walking and looked at Chu Yingzhan strangely. He said in surprise, "Why are you so smart? Help! Murder! Kidnapping! Robbery! This fairy is about to be kidnapped." Chu Yingzhan looked at him pitifully. She opened her mouth wide and screamed at the top of her lungs. Her voice did not even travel 10 meters away. "Scream all you want. No one will pay attention to you, even if you scream until your throat breaks." Yin Nuoxing smiled evilly and rubbed his hands. He looked at Chu Yingzhan like a wolf that saw a fat sheep. "Throat! Throat! Break your throat! Mwahaha!" Xian and the others were speechless when they saw the two of them showing off their acting skills. Can't they talk properly? These two drama queens. Cough! Let's get down to business. After laughing for a while, Yin Nuoxing coughed dryly and pointed at the surrounding trees. He said, "Look, can you see anything wrong?" Chu Yingzhan looked at the trees suspiciously. She tilted her head and blinked her beautiful obsidian eyes. After looking for a long time, she shook her head. This array master can't see anything wrong. She thought that Yin Nuoxing was asking her to see if she could see any traces of an array. She rolled her eyes and said, "It's not an array. Look more carefully." Chu Yingzhan focused on a big tree for a long time. Then, she shook her head and looked at a tree beside her. After a long time, just when Yin Nuoxing thought that she had seen something, she suddenly shouted, "Very big!" Yin Nuoxing was speechless. The corners of his eyes twitched. He asked, "What else?" "Also very tall, very green. The branches and leaves are lush. It's nice to enjoy the shade under the big tree." Chu Yingzhan giggled as she reached out her jade-like hands and counted the branches. Yin Nuoxing was speechless. He wanted to scold her for being an idiot. "What else?" Chu Yingzhan turned around and looked at him innocently. Her little face was full of anticipation. 0 points. Go and see for yourself. Yin Nuoxing turned his back to her and walked elegantly into the depths of the forest. You miser. You can't be like this. Hurry up and tell me. I was wrong, okay? This fairy will apologize to you." Chu Yingzhan saw that he was keeping her in suspense and immediately became anxious. She jumped up on the spot and chased after Yin Nuoxing. She grabbed his hand and said pitifully. Yin Nuoxing didn't even look at her. He dragged her with one hand and continued to walk forward. He took the time to say, "Fend for yourself. You're going to be the death of me." "Big brother Yin, tell little sister." Chu Yingzhan dragged her words and pleaded in a sickening tone. Yin Nuoxing had goosebumps all over his body. He sighed bitterly and stopped in his tracks. When Xian and the others walked up, he looked at Xian and said, "Little girl, tell her." Xian stared blankly for a moment. She stroked her hair with her jade-like fingers and said hesitantly, "I don't know if it's right or not. I just feel that this forest gives me a very uncomfortable feeling. It's as if these trees are missing something, or as if there's something strange in them." Chapter 753. A strange feeling? It seems a little strange, but I can't tell what's wrong with it. Chu Yingzhan tugged at her hair in distress. She looked at Yin Nuoxing in confusion, hoping that he could explain it to her. "Yes, it's fine as long as you can sense it here." Yin Nuoxing nodded. Then he waved his hand gently, and a wisp of wood element condensed in his palm. He said, "You don't have the wood element, so you can't sense it as clearly as I can. From what I can sense, this forest is dead." "Dead?" Chu Yingzhan cried out in surprise. Mei Mao looked at the trees beside her, but she couldn't tell what was wrong. "You'll know once you take a look." Yin Nuoxing nodded. He walked in front of a tree and slapped it hard with his palm. Bang! With a dull sound, the brown bark was smashed to pieces by the palm, revealing a silver-blue color. It was as if the tree had turned silver in an instant. Even the leaves were silver-blue in color. "This is..." Chu Yingzhan looked at the silver-blue tree curiously. Then, she turned to look at Yin Nuoxing. "This is a kind of sculpture that has been eroded by the power of the void and contaminated by the power of space." Yin Nuoxing rubbed his palm gently on the silver-blue tree. He said, "The overly dense power of space destroyed its shape in an instant. The remaining power preserved its shape, and it became like this. This tree has been frozen forever the moment when the power of space swept over. It has been preserved as a crystal. I'm afraid the surroundings are like this, right? Yin Nuashing sighed softly. He raised his head, and a light purple flame condensed. Then, a shock wave suddenly exploded. It automatically ignored Xian, Chu Yingjian, and the others, and bombarded the surrounding trees. Ka-ka-ka! The flame shock wave shattered the brown bark of the trees, turning it into powder that drifted in the air. What appeared in front of everyone was a silver-blue forest. The color made Chu Yingjian's hair stand on end. Now, we can basically confirm that the Sky Illusion Mountain Range has undergone a large-scale spatial transfer, or spatial overlap. Yishi also looked at the silver-blue forest and said, when a large-scale spatial transfer, or spatial overlap, is carried out, it will condense an excessive amount of spatial power. When the spatial power condensed is too large, it will automatically compress into extremely condensed energy. Furthermore, when the transfer or spatial overlap occurs, the compressed energy will return to its original form. The compressed energy is enough to create a huge shock wave. Depending on the size of the object, this shock wave, it can even sweep over hundreds of thousands of kilometers. Of course, this method is very ancient. Now, there's safer space warp and space shift, so the above situation will not happen. Yishi played with a strand of hair, then looked around and sighed. The situation here is a trace left behind by the first situation, and according to Yang Qian, it should be a trace left behind by the overlapping of space. The range of the impact is really not small. This entire forest has been turned into a fossil. If we dig it out, can we sell it as a piece of art? Yin Nuashing also sighed. No wonder there were no magical beasts here. They were probably all dead. The earth here had also died along with the trees, and it probably wouldn't recover. Spatial transfer and spatial overlap were already common 2 or 3 eras ago. There shouldn't be any spatial overlap. Furthermore, looking at the traces here, it shouldn't have been 10 million years ago. Oh, how strange. Yishi muttered. She said the last sentence very softly. Even Yin Nuashing didn't hear her, nor did she pay attention to it. It seems that even if we don't want to pay attention to the Sky Illusion Mountain Range, we have to take a look. Yin Nuashing said casually. She then looked at Yi Shi and suddenly thought of something. She said, Little Shi, when you raised the price with Yang Qian, did you know about this Sky Fantasy Mountain Range? Yi Shi nodded and said, I know, but I don't know much about it. I only know that it's a place similar to a secret realm. As for what's inside, I don't know. However, there's nothing wrong with asking for a higher price. If it weren't for the fact that he still has a key, I would have snatched it and gone in to take a look myself. Everyone smiled bitterly. Is it really okay for you to be so straightforward? After wandering around the forest for a while, they didn't find any more meaningful clues. Yin Nuashing and the others returned to the camp. When they returned, they saw Yang Qian and the others looking at them curiously. It looked like they wanted to talk to them, but didn't dare to. Yin Nuashing couldn't be bothered with their strange looks. She casually set up a tent, set up a spatial formation, and went in. Xian and the others also went into the tent. Chu Yingjian hesitated for a while, then muttered, I'm just too lazy to set up a tent. She also went in after them. The space inside was much bigger than it looked. It was at least the size of a small attic. Let alone 6 people, even 10 people wouldn't find it cramped. They casually rested for a night. Early in the morning, when the sun had just risen, Yang Qian woke up everyone who was sleeping. He also very carefully woke up Yin Nuashing and the others. Facing the light of dawn, the group tidied up and set off again. After a day of hurrying, the distance of 10,000 kilometers was now less than 500 kilometers. Most of them were powerhouses of the demon rank and above. They slightly increased their speed and arrived in front of a mountain range in less than an hour. At this time, the sun had just risen. Oh, we've arrived. The Sky Illusion Mountain Range. Yang Qian reminded them from the front. Everyone hurriedly raised their spirits and looked ahead. Before them was a stretch of mountain range that was like a tall wall. The height of the mountain range was more than 1,000 meters. The The side of the mountain that faced them was as smooth as a mirror. Before the sunlight shone on it, they could see the glossy luster, as if a part of it had been perfectly cut off by a sword. Those 10,000-meter-tall peaks were like blades that were slanted towards the sky. The brownish-yellow luster flickered with a frightening radiance. On those densely packed blades, there were even corpses of demonic beasts, as if they were trying to intimidate them. There's a very large barrier outside the mountain range. Ordinary methods can't break it. Young Master Yang, it's your turn. Yin Nuoxing's evil spirit tightly stared at the mountain peak filled with corpses. His eyes flickered with a substantial radiance. In his eyes, there was a huge array that couldn't be seen through. After a brief moment, he looked at Yang Qian and smiled. Hearing that, Yang Qian also smiled and nodded. With a wave of his hand, the small bell and a small hammer appeared before him. He lightly held them and used the small hammer to lightly strike the small bell. Dong! The sound of the bell wasn't clear. Instead, it was somewhat muffled. Circles of ripples appeared in the air, causing the brownish-yellow mountain range to ripple like water. Following that, a colorful barrier slowly appeared before everyone. That barrier seemed to encompass the entire sky illusion mountain range. It was difficult to see its entire appearance with a single glance. That barrier was like a soap bubble, wavering in the air, giving people the feeling that it would shatter in the next second. As the bell rang, the barrier that was like an inverted bowl gently swayed. Following that, a crack slowly appeared in front of everyone, before slowly expanding. As the barrier opened up, thunderous vibrations resounded between the heavens and earth. The mountain range also started to violently shake. The crack also started to shake even more violently under the shaking. In just a short while, it expanded from the width of a person to 100 meters wide. When everyone saw the situation inside, they all sucked in a breath of cold air. That's... Yin Nuoxing also widened her eyes in astonishment. What appeared inside the crack was a silver blue world. Or rather, it could be said that the sky illusion mountain range was encompassed by a silver blue world. That was a crack in space, not the void. There was only deathly darkness in the void, and this silver blue world was just a crack between space and the void. It was filled with the power of space. Space and even time had become extremely chaotic there. If one wasn't careful, one would be teleported away. As for where one would be sent to, that would be up to fate. A crack in space. A place like that actually exists. Yishi was also a little surprised. As everyone knew, when one shattered space, one would see a pitch-black void. The void wasn't incomparably sturdy, and it could also be disturbed by stronger forces. If the void was shattered, one would be able to see the hidden barrier that belonged to the domain of time. That was the natural barrier that guarded the intersection of space and time. The space crack didn't belong to space, it didn't belong to the time barrier, and it also didn't belong to the void space. It was a thin layer of separation between space and the void space. Because it was so thin, even a mortal-level warrior could casually tear it apart. However, to open it, one had to have a great amount of power. Maybe a great God Realm warrior could do it, or maybe someone who was proficient in the power of space could do it. However, this was the first time that everyone had seen such a theoretical situation. Moreover, there were people who had set up a barrier to isolate it. After everyone entered, the cracks slowly closed. At this moment, the space around them was filled with a silver-blue river. The space in the crack in space was constantly flowing like a fine art painting. It looked mysterious and fascinating. Yin Nuoxing reached out to touch behind him, but he didn't touch the edge of the barrier as he expected. This made him realize that the moment he entered the crack in space, the boundary of space became blurred. This was in the crack, not the barrier. The barrier was just an entrance. This is the aura of the primordial era. Z suddenly cried out in Yin Nuoxing's soul, startling him. Then he heard her continue, the aura of the primordial era, but there's no aura of the great samsara in it. This place was exiled into the void and only returned to this place in recent years. Only by staying in the void can one not be contaminated by the aura of the great samsara. Returned? You're saying that this place was once separated from the realm of the gods, drifting in the starry sky? Yinuashing asked, puzzled. I don't know. This place does have the aura of the primordial era of the realm of the gods. Go and look around. See if there's anything that can be used as a clue. Ziyi shook her head. With the help of Yinuashing's eyes, she looked at the silver-blue world. Her slender eyebrows slightly furrowed. It seemed that many thoughts were surging in her mind, but she couldn't find a concrete answer. The Yin spirit flame is moving slightly. Something might have attracted its attention. Don't worry, it's not a divine flame. It might be something else, Ziyi said again. Yinuashing was so excited that he almost jumped up. However, the latter half of her sentence was like a bucket of cold water poured over him. He could only smile bitterly. However, it also made him curious. If it wasn't a divine flame, what else could have attracted the Yin spirit flame's attention? The mountain spirit flame and purple night flame didn't react. Be careful. Don't spread out too far. We still don't know what's inside, Yang Qian said softly. Everyone nodded. Yang Qian. At this moment, Yinuashing's sudden call made him turn his head. He smiled at her and said, What's the matter? Ignoring the smile that he thought was very charming, Yinuashing rolled her eyes. She looked behind her and said, Try and see if you can open the barrier. Hearing this, Yang Qian was also stunned. After a moment, he nodded. He picked up the small bell and hammer that he hadn't put in yet and gently knocked. Ding! The different sound of the bell caused Yinuashing and the others to tremble slightly. This bell was like the crisp ringing of a bell. It didn't have the grand and heavy sound from before. Yinuashing and the others looked around vigilantly. They wanted to see what was going on. However, the sound of the bell rippled slightly in the air and quietly disappeared. It didn't even cause the space to ripple in the slightest. I think we're trapped here. Yinuashing couldn't help but laugh softly when she saw this. That seems to be the case. Ha ha ha. Yang Qian was also stunned for a moment. Then, he laughed dryly, causing everyone to be speechless. Did you understand, or were you scared silly? After laughing dryly for a while, the expression on Yang Qian's face eased slightly. He mumbled for a while, then helplessly turned his head and looked at Yinuashing. Then we can only find another exit. I can't open it anyway, but it's no big deal. The worst-case scenario is that we'll be trapped here forever. Yes, that's all. Yinuashing replied with a sigh when he said the first word. Her words made everyone's hearts turn cold. However, they looked at Yi with hope. She was a great array master. She should have a way. Don't look at me. The space in the crevice is already chaotic to a certain extent. Let alone a teleportation formation, we might not even be able to find an exit. Yi helplessly shrugged her small shoulders when she saw everyone's hopeful gazes. She spoke in a rather heartless manner. Don't. My two elder sisters must have a way, right? Little sister, this little fairy is in the prime of her life. I don't want to be buried here for no reason. No one will remember me even if I die like this. At most, the detestable father and mother who cheated their daughter will cry and say that I just ran away from home and haven't had enough fun. Isn't this dying before achieving victory? Before the others could react, Chu Yingzhan's little face suddenly collapsed. Her expression was as exaggerated as it could be. Her words also made Yinuashing and the others a little speechless. Chapter 754. In the pitch-black tomb, there was a hole that was more than 100 feet high and more than 100 feet wide. Neat rectangular areas were dug out from the stone walls on both sides. Statues and murals were placed on top of them. The stone statues and murals gave people a very oppressive feeling. They were incomparably heavy, making the already dark tomb even more gloomy and terrifying. Half an hour ago, Yinuashing, Yang Qian, and the others discussed for a while and left behind a jade slip. The two groups then split up to find a way out. The huge spatial crevice was much bigger than what they could see from the outside. This was originally the interior of the Sky Fantasy Mountain Range, but another piece of land was forcefully stuffed in. Perhaps because of poor technique, these two pieces of land did not merge together. Instead, they were stacked together, making this space appear extremely vast. The piece of land that was forcefully stuffed and divided the Sky Fantasy Mountain Range into 4 parts from middle. The piece of land that was forcefully stuffed and occupied the most central position. This was discovered by Yun Nuoxing's group after they split up. It was not a shocking clue. It was better to say that they were mentally prepared for it. Yang Xian and the others also seemed to have discovered something, but they didn't find anything special. They saw a city. Perhaps because it was in the spatial crevice, the city was well preserved. It was just that there was nothing inside. There were many traces of battle, like traces of a great battle. On Yun Nuoxing's side, they were following a very irresponsible leader. This leader also very casually let a wisp of inexplicable consciousness in his body lead them forward. As a result, they were led into this extremely strange tomb. However, I didn't know at first. From a surface, they saw a house. After pushing the door open and entering, it turned into a tomb. Even the door was gone. This also made them realize that this was caused by the chaotic space here. Trouble after trouble. Speaking of which, are you all afraid of ghosts? Why are you holding on so tightly? I'm afraid of ghosts too. At this moment, in the tomb, several bright crystals were floating. They were 10 meters away from each other, illuminating the space within 100 meters. Yin Nuoxing walked with difficulty because he was being pulled by several pairs of jade-like hands. His clothes were all messed up. However, looking at Ziyin and the others, they didn't seem to be afraid. At least, they weren't afraid of him. His heart was beating like a drum. Looking at the dark tomb, he felt his heart tighten. You're already an adult, yet you're still afraid of ghosts. I think ghosts will be more afraid of Brother Nuo. Yi Shi, who was walking in front, turned around and smiled mischievously. She made a face at Yin Nuoxing. If there really were ghosts, they would probably be scared out of their wits when they saw Yin Nuoxing's crazy appearance. However, Yin Nuoxing's elegant clothes and pitiful face didn't have any power at all. So you're afraid of ghosts. He, a dignified demonic realm cultivator, is actually afraid of ghosts. Don't worry, the space within 100 meters is illuminated. Even if there are ghosts, they won't scare you. Even if they suddenly appear, there's still this fairy. Chu Yingzhan smiled sweetly and waved her small fists, looking fearless. Yin Nuoxing looked at her strangely and sighed. Then don't pull on my sleeve. It's going to tear. I'm supporting you so that the space won't be chaotic and everyone won't get lost. It's the most tiring thing to look for someone. Chu Yingzhan curled her lips, turned her head, and snorted softly. As she spoke, she gripped Yin Nuoxing's dress even harder, making the latter very nervous. She was afraid that she would tear her dress. You're the one who's afraid, aren't you? Yin Nuoxing glanced at her, then looked at Ziyin, who was almost half in his arms, and Feng who was walking in front of him and holding his hand. She couldn't help but sigh. I'm not afraid. I'm not afraid of anything. They're just ghosts and otherworldly items. What's there to be afraid of? To tell you the truth, I've seen otherworldly soldiers. Chu Yingzhan blushed and rolled her eyes at Yin Nuoxing. Then, she waved her small fists and began to brag. Looking at her playful bragging, Yin Nuoxing, Ziyin, and Feng looked at each other. Then, Yin Nuoxing smirked and looked forward. Suddenly, he screamed, "Ghost!" Ah! Chu Yingzhan was also startled by this scream. Her pretty face changed dramatically. She quickly grabbed Yin Nuoxing and threw half of her body into his arms. Then, she raised her head nervously. However, before she could raise it, she quickly lowered her head. She wanted to look, but didn't dare to. Yin Nuoxing and the others didn't know whether to laugh or cry. I thought you weren't afraid of ghosts? Yin Nuoxing didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Chu Yingzhan was startled when she heard this. She hurriedly raised her head, only to see that the area in front of her was completely empty. There was nothing there, only a few tattered coffins and tombs standing below the stone statues to the side. It was quiet, as if it had been there since ancient times. After a while, Chu Yingzhan's pretty face suddenly turned red. She quickly struggled out of Yin Nuoxing's arms and glared at him angrily. You tricked me. Look at how cute you are. It would be a waste if I didn't play with you, Yin Nuoxing said with a smile. Ah, I'm going to kill you. Hearing him admit it, Chu Yingxian immediately exploded. She was so angry that her beautiful hair fluttered, even though there was no wind. She punched Yin Nuoxing's chest with one of her jade-like hands, and her other hand also punched down angrily. Little fists are punching your chest. Are you acting coquettishly with me? Yin Nuoxing couldn't help but chuckle. Her punches were small and delicate, so he didn't feel any pain. Screw you. Chu Yingxian angrily slapped his chest and snorted. She turned her head and ignored him. However, her jade-like hands were still grabbing Yin Nuoxing's sleeves, as if she was worried that he would disappear. Xian and Feng smiled as they looked at each other. Since Little Star was teasing Yingxian, it also proved that she was someone worth befriending. It seemed that they didn't have to be too wary of her. At this moment, little Bing Air, who was walking behind them and pulling Yin Nuoxing's long hair, asked curiously, "So Daddy is afraid of ghosts?" Because this was the first time Bing Air called Yin Nuoxing in front of her, this form of address made Chu Yingxian stare blankly for a long time. Mei Mao looked at Yin Nuoxing in astonishment, then turned her head to look at Bing Air and asked in astonishment, "She's your daughter?" Yin Nuoxing scratched his head in distress. He thought for a moment, then saw Bing Air's dependent gaze and could only nod helplessly. In name, you can just take it that way. AI, in name? I understand, I know. Chu Yingxian looked at him in astonishment, then sighed and nodded. She looked as if she already knew everything, which made Yin Nuoxing's expression become a little strange. Just as Yin Nuoxing felt that something was wrong, Chu Yingxian sighed and looked at him meaningfully. Then, she looked at little Bing Air and whispered in his ear, "Did you get cuckolded?" Yin Nuoxing suddenly spat out a mouthful of water. Although this sound was very soft, Xian and the others still heard it, and their expressions became extremely strange. Yi Shi, who was in front, happened to kick a handful of soil. She didn't react in time and staggered and almost fell. Yin Nuoxing's face twitched for quite a while. His face was as black as charcoal. Just as he was about to open his mouth to say something, his footsteps suddenly paused. After which, he slowly raised his eyes and looked forward. He glanced at her and said, "I will teach you a lesson later. TSK, I'm a demigod. No matter what, I'm still stronger than a little demon like you. Do you think I'm afraid of you?" Hearing this, Chu Yingxian pursed her lips but didn't say anything. When she saw that he had stopped, she also stopped and looked in the direction that Yin Nuoxing was staring. Then, Mei Mao also froze. Yishi took a few steps back and came to Yin Nuoxing's side. She looked ahead cautiously. In the middle of the road, a gray shadow was faintly discernible and seemed to be drifting erratically. Furthermore, this shadow appeared very suddenly, and there was no reaction. It only appeared when they were less than 10 meters away. It was the figure of a young man, about 25 years old. His face was frighteningly pale, and his messy long hair made him look especially terrifying in this gloomy environment. His eyes were empty and lifeless, and contained a sense of loss and pain. His entire body floated half a foot on the ground like a ghost. Finally, a guest has arrived. A hoarse voice slowly resounded in the tomb. Yin Nuoxing and the others were stunned, and they all stared at the young ghost. They knew that this was a remnant soul, and the voice just now was clearly his. There was no other male voice present. "Since you're here, stay with us." That cold and gloomy voice contained pain and ferocity. The young man lifted his head, and his confused eyes were bloodshot. He looked at Yin Nuoxing and the others with an evil smile. His messy long hair and beard were mixed together. His huge eyes were wide open, and there was a terrifying majesty in them. Yin Nuoxing looked at the pair of eyes and went into a trance for a moment. It was as if he saw a purgatory in the netherworld. Countless vengeful spirits floated between the heavens and earth, roaring at him. Rolling energy condensed into a skeleton that was tens of thousands of feet tall before him. A giant palm suddenly came down from the sky. "Huh, Yin Nuoxing's expression was absent-minded for an instant before he suddenly let out a loud shout. His shout was mixed with spiritual strength as it abruptly spread outwards. The frightening purgatory scene suddenly exploded and dissipated when it came into contact with his spiritual strength. At the same time he shouted, Feng Er and the others beside him also shouted in unison and broke free from the purgatory illusion. Then, they looked at each other, and their expressions became serious. What did he just say? Why did he suddenly attack us? Chu Yingzhan frowned, and her obsidian-like Mei Mao sparkled as she stared at the young man's remnant soul. That's the language of Kanzaki. It's normal that you don't understand it. Yin Nuoxing rolled his eyes at her and wanted to say something, but Yishi had already let out a coquettish grunt. Her petite body shot out, and hundreds of spell formations condensed around her in an instant. Like a blue spear, they shot towards the young man's soul fragment. Who cares what he said? Let's kill him first. Yishi shouted. She waved her small hand, and hundreds of arrays smashed down. The young man's remnant soul roared at the sky, and an incomparably violent aura swept out like a storm. A gray whirlwind rushed towards the arrays. Bang! 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 The gray gas seemed to be very powerful, but when it came into contact with the arrays, it suddenly exploded like fireworks. It didn't even have the time to spread out before it was annihilated in midair. The young man's remnant soul roared like a ghost. He waved his hands, and two hidden swords pierced out with a shocking cold light. Kacha! The two hidden swords of unknown grade directly hit the arrays. With just a light touch, the two hidden swords instantly shattered into a pile of fragments. The young man's remnant soul was completely exposed under the light of the arrays. Wisps of black gas evaporated from his body under the illumination of the arrays. When the array swept past the young man's remnant soul, his blank eyes regained their clarity. A ray of light flashed past, and the gray soul body also regained its clear appearance. The black gas that evaporated from his soul dissipated as soon as it left his body. When Yishi saw this, she waved her small hand, and the arrays returned to her. She looked at the young man's remnant soul and waved her hand at Yin Nuoxing and the others, who were jogging over. She still looked at the young man warily, and the arrays around her spun and spewed out terrifying energy. The nightmare is over. After dozens of epochs of wandering, I've finally returned to my homeland. Stranger, thank you for freeing me for the nightmare. The young man looked at Yin Nuoxing and the others, and smiled as he clasped his hands. The remnant soul was like a candle in the wind, and after the black gas dissipated, he completely lost his strength. At this moment, his body became slightly transparent. His eyes were as clear as a mirror, and he stared at Yin Nuoxing and the others with a smile. His transparent body quickly disappeared into the air, turning into specks of light that floated into the sky. Xian and the others looked at each other, and then they all looked at Yin Nuoxing. He spoke the language of Kanzaki, and only he could understand it. Chu Yingzhan was still a little confused, but when he saw Xian and the others staring at him, he also turned his obsidian-like Mei Mao to stare at him, although he didn't know what she was looking at. Being stared at by Chu Yingzhan was a little uncomfortable. Yin Nuoxing laughed dryly, waved his hand, and hurriedly ran to the place where the young man was just now. There was a lone grave there, and an ancient tablet that had fallen and shattered into pieces. How is it? What did you see? Chu Yingzhan curiously ran next to him and squatted down to look at the shattered ancient tablet. She looked up at him with her beautiful eyes and stared at him in a daze. She didn't even ask why he knew the language of Kanzaki or anything like that. It was as if it wasn't a big deal for him to know, or perhaps it was more accurate to say that she wasn't surprised. Yin Nuoxing rolled his eyes. He hadn't even read it yet. He squatted down and looked at the words that were blurred and fragmented by the erosion of time. After deciphering for a long time, he finally extracted a piece of information that he felt was useful. He read it softly. Azure Cloud, Great Emperor. Emperor Azure Cloud? Hearing this name, Yishi froze for a moment, then hurriedly ran to his side, squatted down, and asked, What's wrong with Emperor Azure Cloud? You know him?" Seeing how nervous she was, Yin Nuoxing blurted out in shock. But as soon as he said that, he bitterly smiled. How could little she know the language of Kanzaki that this young man spoke? She probably heard it before. Yishi rolled her eyes at him, then unhappily poked his head with her hand, and said, "Emperor Azure Cloud, one of the strongest gods in the Dark Age, but he fell on the path to becoming a celestial." No, perhaps the word fell isn't quite right. Back then, he went missing. There was no news of him dying in battle. These things are still recorded in the Dark Age Hero Spirit Record. Although not everyone knows about it, there are actually quite a few people who know about it. Emperor Azure Cloud was also very famous back then. In the chaotic era of the Dark Age, he stepped into the God Realm together with a few other good friends, and they worked together for many years, climbing towards the Celestial Realm. But in the end, they disappeared without a trace. It was also a strange story back then, so when I heard this name, I felt a little incredulous. Yishi said. After hearing this, Yin Nuoxing fell in a deep thought. He asked Zai in his mind, "Zai, didn't you say that this is the aura of the far ancient era?" The aura of the far ancient era does indeed smell like this. There's no mistake about it. But why do you say it's the Dark Age? I really don't know. Zai also shook her head in confusion. She came from the far ancient era, so naturally, she wouldn't mistake this aura. Or rather, it was precisely because it was the aura of the far ancient era that she felt close to it. Yin Nuoxing was silent. He calmly stood up and looked in front of him. A Dark Age hero spirit. Was there any other existence in this tomb? Even if the gods of this generation had amazing cultivation, they couldn't escape the suppression of time in the end. In this dark place where there's no sun, they became ghosts and fell forever. Xian stared at the broken tombstone and sighed faintly. Chapter 755. Hey, how do you know that's the language of the gods? Do you speak the language of the mythological era? I can't tell you. Don't be so stingy, I won't tell anyone. There's only a few of us in this godforsaken place. There won't be a third, seventh person who knows. Just now, an ancient ghost appeared. Who knows if another one will appear? That's a ghost, just a dead thing. It's already dead. Why would it care about your secret? Hurry up and tell me. Act cute, and I'll tell you. Meow. Where's your moral integrity? In the dark tomb, they couldn't tell the direction. There was only one source of light that covered 200 meters. This narrow stone passageway seemed to have no end. The ground was filled with wooden crosses, and occasionally, one or two tattered ancient tablets would appear, telling the people in the light source of the desolation of this place. It wasn't that they didn't want to go out, but they had been wandering in this tomb for more than an hour and still couldn't find the exit. They could only continue walking along this endless passageway. Beside them, there were huge stone sculptures and murals that didn't change. The gloomy air spread out invisibly, making the group below feel very oppressed. They could only talk to relieve the gloominess in their hearts. Amidst the banter and banter, an unknown amount of time had passed. The great Emperor of Azure Cloud was not the only remnant soul they had seen. However, he was the only remnant soul that still had a little bit of consciousness. The others, after being shattered by Yi Shi, did not stay for long before disappearing. When they disappeared, they were all in a daze and did not remember who they were in the end. Great Emperor Ling Ying, Yin Yang Soul God, Emperor God Wu Yang. Yin Nuoxing spat out the names of the powerful deities of the Dark Age. The more he said the names on the stone tablets, the more shocked Chu Yingzhan and Yi Shi were. Although they called themselves great emperors, they were all powerful deities. There was no one who wasn't a deity buried here. This place was like the graveyard of the gods. Groups of gods were buried here, and a few of them had remnant souls left. However, in the long river of time, all of them had been obliterated. The remaining remnant souls were also in imminent danger. Any god could easily deal with them. Yin Nuoxing and the others continued to walk forward, talking about irrelevant things. Suddenly, a lake appeared in front of them. On the calm surface of the water, there was a woman. She was extremely beautiful, and her deep Mao was like the calm sea. Her temperament was like that of an immortal, as if a real fairy had descended to the mortal world. However, her eyes were dim and lifeless. Her sea-blue eyes, which should have been moving, were now like stones. When Yun Nuoxing and the others stopped in shock, the woman in the lake glanced at them indifferently. Her steps did not stop. Every step she took on the surface of the lake caused slight ripples. However, her figure remained in the same spot and did not close the distance between them. Splash! The lake water suddenly roared, creating a wave that was tens of thousands of feet tall. It swept towards the 6 people from Yun Nuo planet. The monstrous wave contained a bone-chilling aura that froze the crosses and stone tablets on the ground. Yun Nuoxing's mind focused. Just as he was about to make a move, Yishi shouted softly. Her petite body rose into the air, and she struck out with her palm. It was as if her palm had pierced through the void and directly hit the waves. Bang! The sweeping waves were smashed into splashes by the petite palm. The bone-chilling cold disappeared in an instant. Yishi's figure also swooped down in an instant. In less than a breath's time, she was in front of the woman. From her wide sleeves, a strong power of death gushed out and enveloped the woman. The fairy was stunned. There was no light in her ocean-blue eyes. She watched indifferently as the power of death eroded her. Wisps of black gas were also peeled off from her body and finally disappeared into nothingness. After a moment, Yishi quietly retreated. The fairy's eyes regained their clarity. A wisp of helplessness and unwillingness flashed across Mei Mao's eyes. However, it was only for an instant. This expression completely disappeared and was replaced by an expression of relief. Mei Mao stared at Yishi and smiled slightly. She nodded at her. Her figure also gradually disappeared like the previous remnant souls. This is the 5th one, right? How many more heroic souls are buried in this pitch-black place? But what I'm more concerned about is, where is the exit? Yun Nuoxing and the others walked to Yishi's side. Yun Nuoxing let out a long sigh and muttered somewhat helplessly, "Heroic souls?" Yishi raised her head and glanced at him. Then, she looked forward and softly said, "There is a resentment in these remnant souls. It is this power that prevents them from transcending and entering reincarnation. They are imprisoned in this place where there is no light." Imprisoned? These are all deities. Who could imprison them? Yun Nuoxing could not help but exclaim in shock. Even deities could be imprisoned? The high and mighty deities are just weak children in front of even more powerful deities. Yishi kicked away the cross erected in front of her. Then she smiled and said, "After dozens of eras, even if they are the remnant souls of deities, they do not have much power left. Any deity can easily deal with them. They're not as terrifying as they look on the surface. Don't worry." Yun Nuoxing shook her head and said helplessly, "I am very confident in Little Shi's combat power. I'm just very worried about whether we can get out of here." As soon as this was brought up, everyone fell silent and looked sullen. They had been walking in this godforsaken place for 6 hours. Little Bing Air only realized that 6 hours had passed when she was counting the time out of boredom. In the space crevice, there was no clear space. Space turned from an illusory entity into an illusion within an illusion. It was an existence that could not be touched, but could be known. At this moment, it became even more unclear. If it were not for this reason, with Yun Nuoxing and Yi Shi's attainments in magic formations, they could easily pass through it. It was a pity that their teleportation formation did not work here at all. After sighing for a while, Yun Nuoxing habitually lowered her head. At this time, the lake had disappeared. The ability to change the world with a single thought was indeed possessed by deities. It was just that they were only in appearance. It was difficult for them to release monstrous power. On the ground, there was a severely shattered stone tablet. The fragments were spread over 3 meters. It took a long time to put them together into a stone tablet. Yun Nuoxing looked inside and was stunned. She said in astonishment, "Shui Yiwu, Shui Yiwu, the self-proclaimed water deity from the Dark Age? That fairy just now was her? Chu Yingzhan cried out in surprise. She grabbed Yin Nuoxing's clothes and could not help but use a bit more strength. Why are these deities gathered here? Why are they all dead? Yin Nuoxing frowned. Compared to the titles and names of those deities, she felt that it was a very terrifying thing for them to die here. I don't know about that. Brother Nuo is the deity. You could see the characters on the tombstones. Did you not see any information? Yishi shook her head and said softly, "No, many of the broken tablets are blurry. Only the names are clear. Some of the words can be recognized. I know every word, but they can't form a sentence." Yin Nuoxing squatted down and looked at the tombstones of Shui, Yi Wu, and Water Deity. Other than the names, there was one word at the bottom that she could barely recognize. Chaos. Yin Nuoxing murmured, "Previously, on the Azure Cloud Emperor's tombstone, there was a word drifting. On the second tombstone, there was a word foreign. After that, there was a word shatter, destroy, and fall. This one has a word chaos. Can you guys think of anything?" Raising his head, Yin Nuoxing looked at Xian and Chu Yingzhan for help. Anyway, at this time, his brain was about to shut down. He knew every word, but it was a pity that the words were not connected together. Who knows if they were talking about the same thing? Even if they were talking about the same thing, it would be difficult to recognize them with just a few words. I'm not too sure. Although I'm curious about history, it's only curiosity. I didn't study it too deeply. I didn't know some things about the Dark Age, but I don't know about this. If I know the time, maybe I can know what happened. Chu Yingzhan murmured. When was the Azure Cloud Emperor? Yin Nuoxing looked at Yi Shi and asked. I only know that he was a god of the Dark Age. More than that, I have no way to investigate. Even the Dark Age hero record did not record the year of his birth. In fact, the people recorded in the hero record do not have the year of their birth. It only records what the person did. Yishi said, "Then isn't there no other way?" Yin Nuoxing stared. The girls nodded helplessly. They really didn't know. Xian's experience was similar to Yin Nuoxing's. Although Feng was one of the 4 mythological beasts passed down from the mythological era, she didn't have any specific memories. As for little Bing Er, she was just a month old. She was like a blank piece of paper. Guliu, while Yin Nuoxing and the others were troubled, a strange sound came from the tomb. It sounded like something was rolling. The echo was very loud. It came from the front and made them shudder. Chu Yingzhan was so frightened by this sound that she shrank behind Yin Nuoxing. Her obsidian eyes stared mischievously at the darkness in the distance, and Yishi was already prepared for battle. When Yin Nuoxing and the others reacted like birds startled by the twang of a bow, the sound went silent again. The tomb was quiet. Only the sound of their rapid breathing could be heard. Pairs of bright eyes looked around vigilantly. After a while, nothing special happened. Only then did they relax a little. Let's go. Maybe the answer we want is in front. Yin Nuoxing waved her hand and looked at the hole in the front. She slowly walked forward. Xian and the others followed closely behind. After an unknown period of time, perhaps 4 or 5 hours, little Bing Er was too lazy to count. She held Yin Nuoxing's long hair and followed closely behind. During this period, there were occasionally heroic souls who came back to life. However, Yishi slapped away the black matter inside them, freeing the heroic souls from the Dark Age. However, as they walked forward, the number of heroic souls decreased. At first, they would see one every once in a while. Now, they couldn't see any at all. At first, the few of them would chat. However, later on, for some reason, they all shut up. The atmosphere became oppressive. It was as if a great demon was staring at them from the deep darkness. After passing through an abyss that suddenly appeared and walking for another hour, a magnificent hall appeared at the place where the crystal shone, underground palace. Yishi could not help but murmur softly when she saw the hall from afar. In the deep tomb, a hall was embedded in the rock wall. Countless thick stone pillars supported the stone walls from top to bottom. The hall was a mess. There were corpses everywhere. Many of them were broken. Arms, legs, and heads were densely piled together. These people seemed to have experienced a fight before they died. Even the hall looked tragic. The ancient Dark Age. What happened here at that time? After walking into the hall and seeing this tragic scene, Yun Nuashing felt a little suffocated. Some of the corpses piled together were dark gold. Some were pure gold. She knew that these gold and dark gold corpses were the corpses of gods. Even though they were omnipotent when they were alive, now, after 70 or 80 eras, only the corpses of gods remained. These corpses of gods no longer have any power. All of them have been obliterated by time. Yishi looked at a golden thigh bone at her feet and let out a long sigh. There was a sense of disappointment in her voice. She could not help but bend down and use her divine essence to wrap her sleeve and pick it up. Not long after Yishi picked it up, the thigh bone trembled slightly and turned into a golden powder that drifted in the air. Seeing this scene, Yun Nuashing and the others could not help but sigh. Gods. The supreme power that so many people pursued was nothing but a speck of dust under the scouring of time. After dozens of eras, they turned into ashes in the end. Is this the end of the gods? But what's the difference between them and ordinary people? In exchange for a vigorous life, they were buried in this dark place and quietly turned into powder. Yin Nuashing sighed sadly. He did not want to talk about the meaning of life here. He just could not help but sigh. He wanted to ask why they had worked so hard for so many years to become gods. Great Emperor Qing Yun, Great Emperor Ling Ying, Emperor God Wu Yang, Water Spiritual God, Yin Yang Soul God, they were all gods. The corpses in the hall were also gods. However, before they died, no one thought or knew that their glorious lives would be buried in this unknown place. In the end, why did they spend their lives in poverty? Let's go back. Chu Yingzhan tugged on Yun Nuashing's sleeve, her beautiful face a bit sad. She couldn't bear to see such a scene and seemed a bit sad. There's no way back. Now is not the time to be sad. If we can't find a way out, we will become the second batch of people buried here. Yun Nuashing shook his head. The space in the space crevice is very chaotic. Formations and spatial power are not effective. We can only find a common passage. Since someone was buried here, there must be an exit. Even if it's buried, we can dig it out. Chu Yingzhan bit her red lips with her pearly white teeth. After a while, she nodded gently. Chapter 756. In the dusty hall, bones and bone dust were piled all over the floor. In the center of the hall, a giant sarcophagus floated quietly. This sarcophagus was about 3 meters long and 1 meter wide. It was placed on a 6-step staircase. The surface of the sarcophagus was covered in mysterious runes. The closer one was to the sarcophagus, the more bones there were. These god spirits seemed to have been fighting over this mysterious sarcophagus before they died. There were many god spirits in the Dark Age. Even in the Ancient Age, there were many god spirits. However, in the later stages of the Ancient Age, the god spirits went into hibernation. In the Ancient Age, the god spirits did not appear. The Emperor realm was first. At that time, the God Emperor was the strongest fighting force, Yishi said quietly. The skeletons were piled up in a crooked manner. With the slightest breeze, they would turn into dust and scatter on the ground. Yin Nuashing and the others approached the stone coffin. Just as they were 3 feet away, a sense of vigilance suddenly surfaced in their minds. They felt slightly dizzy. Be careful. The thing in this sarcophagus is not simple. Or rather, the runes on the sarcophagus are very mysterious, Yishi reminded them. Dozens of eras have passed. The god spirits have been annihilated in the river of time. What is in this sarcophagus that can cross the boundary between life and death of the god spirits? Yin Nuashing frowned. He also felt that strange feeling. It was as if he would be thrown away if he took another step forward. The aura on the sarcophagus seemed to be eternal. The god spirits had been annihilated in the river of time. Little star, we can't get close to this sarcophagus. As Yin Nuashing took a few more steps forward, Xian and Chu Yingzhan felt a little dizzy. Their faces turned pale. It was as if there was an aura locked onto them. It made them shudder. They quickly took a few steps back. What's wrong? Yin Nuashing turned his head. He saw that only Xian and Chu Yingxian had retreated. Bing Er and Feng were right behind him. They did not seem to be affected. He did not feel anything strange either, although this sense of vigilance was very strange. Xian shook his head and said, "My soul trembles when I get closer, even with my physique. I'm about the same. I don't know the specifics, but why were you able to go up? This fairy is very unhappy." Chu Yingxian crossed her arms in front of her chest and watched Yin Nuoxing and the others climb up the stairs. She couldn't help but mutter. There was a hint of unwillingness in Mei Mao. Hearing their words, Yin Nuoxing raised her eyebrows. This situation was quite interesting. Even the five elements body couldn't get close, and even the demigod masters couldn't move an inch. It probably had nothing to do with the physique or divinity. Since they mentioned the soul, Bing Er and Feng were both divine beasts, but their souls shouldn't be strong. I guess it's because of the soul contract. Yin Nuoxing muttered to herself with uncertainty. After guessing for a long time, she still couldn't figure out the reason. She turned her head and said to the two girls, "You two go and look at other places." Bing Er followed them. Hearing the last sentence, Bing Er nodded obediently. She walked lightly to Xian and Feng, and quietly stared at them with her blue-gold eyes. Xian nodded and walked to other places in the empty hall. Chu Yingxian was a little uncomfortable with Yin Nuoxing giving orders, but she didn't say anything at this time. She muttered and followed Xian to the side. Yin Nuoxing, Feng, and Yishi carefully looked at the sarcophagus in front of them. As they walked closer, the throbbing in their souls calmed down a lot and became indifferent. This made them even more curious. The sarcophagus in front of them was completely sealed. There was no lid, and even with Yi Shi's Grandmaster level, she couldn't recognize the mysterious runes on it. Yin Nuoxing gently stroked the sarcophagus and shook her head at Yi Shi and the others. There were also people who spoke the language of gods in the Dark Age. I thought it was related to the language of gods, but now it seems that it should be the runes of gods or the Dark Age. I can't recognize it. Even Big Brother Nuo can't recognize it. We can give up. There's no need to study it. Hearing this, Yishi straightforwardly stepped down from the stairs. Even Yin Nuoxing, who had the most ancient knowledge and language, couldn't recognize it. It was basically futile for them to study it. There was no need to waste time. Moreover, there were so many gods. Although they didn't know what kind of earth-shattering battle happened, in the end, they couldn't open the sarcophagus. No matter how hard they tried, it would be useless. There were 4 skeletons closest to the sarcophagus. They probably couldn't do anything to the sarcophagus. Okay. Yin Nuoxing also nodded. She turned around and walked towards Xian and the others. Hearing the footsteps behind them, Xian and Chu Yingxian looked at each other and slowly stood up from their squatting positions. Chu Yingxian coughed softly and looked at Yin Nuoxing with a slightly red face. She said, "Little star, don't we look like we're robbing a tomb?" As she said that, she stretched out her hand. In the palm of her white, jade-like hand, there was a pendant. There was a strange, sky-blue gemstone hanging from the pendant. She had found it while wandering around. In fact, she had found more than one thing. However, when she touched the other things, they all turned into dust and disappeared like the skeletons. Only this piece was perfectly preserved, although it was dim and lightless. Since it could withstand the erosion of dozens of eras, it shouldn't be an ordinary object. Yin Nuoxing took the pendant and looked at it. She gently caressed the strange, sky-blue gemstone and felt a slight touch. However, after a while, she sighed and put it back in Xian's hand. She said helplessly, "Keep it for now. I can't recognize it." Hearing this, Xian and the others looked at her in surprise. Yishi couldn't help but exclaim, "Oh my God, the mobile encyclopedia is not working today." 2 blue veins popped out on Yin Nuoxing's forehead, and his cheeks twitched. He retorted, "Everything that exists here is from the Dark Age and above. If placed in the present, they are all cultural relics among cultural relics, and those that can be left behind from that era are all divine objects. Although I have read a lot of books, I can't recognize everything." That's true. Yishi nodded in agreement. Then, she joked, why don't I go back and get some books from the Dark Age for Brother Nua so that you can study them? Forget it. Yin Nuashing smiled bitterly and shook his head. Wandering aimlessly in the hall, looking at the corpses lying in the corners, Yin Nuashing could not help but let out a long sigh. Then, he found that there seemed to be a line of words carved on the ground beside one of the corpses. This made him a little surprised. In this hall, almost everything had decayed. He did not expect that there would be words preserved. However, when he stopped and wiped away the dust and wanted to take a closer look, he was disappointed again. The words carved on the hard floor were indeed preserved. However, they were very blurry and couldn't be recognized. However, the blurry words here were different from the blurry words on the ancient tablet in front. The blurry words on the ancient tablet were affected by the erosion of time. The power contained in the words had also disappeared with the passing of the owner. The same was true for the words. However, the words on the ground were destroyed by someone. There were many scratches. It could be seen that it was done by a sharp weapon. Yishi tried her best, but couldn't leave a mark on the ground. It was obvious how strong the floor here was. Even after dozens of eras, it still didn't break. Yin Nuashing still tried to decipher it. Even though it was scratched beyond recognition, there was still a little handwriting left. It was very shallow and difficult to recognize. He could feel a little when he pressed it with his hand. Fortunately, those scratches were a little shallow. If he used more force, he would not be able to recognize it at all. The extremity of heaven, the beginning of Tao. After a long time, Yin Nuashing recognized 6 words with difficulty and said them out loud. When Yishi and the others heard him speak, they were all stunned. They quickly pricked up their ears, wanting to hear more. However, they saw Yin Nuashing shrugging helplessly. That's it. I can't recognize the rest. I can't recognize anything from those 6 words. Yishi frowned slightly and scratched her hair. Then, she said in distress, but I'll remember it first. I'll look for it when I have the chance in the future. After walking around again, they didn't find anything else. Yin Nuashing and the others could only sigh and look at the deeper passage. It seemed that they could only continue walking forward. On the other team, Yang Qian was a little depressed. After stepping into this strange space crevice, 2 groups of people were teleported away. Their group arrived in front of a dilapidated ancient temple. They hadn't even taken 2 steps when another group was teleported away. A team of more than 30 people was completely scattered in about 10 minutes. Only a few youths and the son of God expert were left. There was no news of the others. What the hell is this place? Yang Qian was very depressed. They had come here as the vanguard to investigate, but they had been scattered into piles without seeing anything. Furthermore, 2 of the soul tablets in his hands had already shattered. This meant that those 2 fellows had been buried here forever. Perhaps even their bones could not be seen. Compared to this, he was more worried about the whereabouts of Yin Nuashing and the others. Not to mention that they had an array grandmaster with them. He didn't know their background. If something happened to them in his hands, he wouldn't be able to bear the responsibility. Young master. The son of God expert looked at Yang Qian and couldn't help but sigh when he saw the confusion on his face. It's okay. Let's walk around here first. It's not a good idea to stay here. Yang Qian waved his hand and said, from now on, don't go too far. Try to gather within a 3-meter radius. If another person is teleported away, we'll be in trouble. We still haven't figured out where this place is. Why don't we go there first? A youth pointed behind him. There was a vague shadow of a building there. Okay. Yang Qian nodded. He had been watching that place for a while. It was when they were heading towards that place that a group of people had been teleported away. At this moment, the number of people had been reduced to a dangerous level, which made him hesitate. However, there was no use in hesitating. He could only go there first and make the next decision. Waiting was not a good idea. As they flew through the mountains, the son of God expert took out a tough rope and tied it around their arms. This was to prevent the sudden spatial disorder from throwing them out again. After passing through a canyon, they rushed out of the mountain range and arrived at a plain. Yang Qian waved his hand and stopped. Looking at the place in front of him, there was some shock in his eyes. This was the ruins of an ancient city. It covered an area of hundreds of thousands of miles. Judging from its size, it must have been a glorious city in the past. However, under the erosion of time, it was now in ruins. The walls had collapsed, and the houses had collapsed. Dense forests had grown in many places. It looked like a city in a primitive forest. On the mottled walls, there were many vague marks carved. This city left behind from the Dark Age vaguely told Yang Qian and the others about its former glory. However, time had washed everything away. Desolation flashed across the hearts of Yang Qian and the rest when they saw the shattered walls and houses, as well as the skeletons that littered the ground. Although they did not know what the city had experienced, they could not help but sigh when they saw the once majestic city reduced to a dilapidated field, leaving behind only a desolate land. No one could completely investigate what had happened in the Dark Age. It was likely that no one knew what this city in the spatial crevice had experienced. So tragic. I heard that during the Dark Age, the entire divine world, no, the entire Eight Elements realm, was shrouded in a haze. There was an invisible hand controlling everything in the Eight Elements realm. At that time, this hand had also done something to the divine world. I don't know if this is the trace left behind by that hand. A weak-looking youth whispered. This was a secret of the Dark Age. Not many people knew about it. Even in ancient books, there were only a few records. It was possible that some ancient books had this content. Invisible hand. The son of God expert asked with a puzzled look. It seemed that he knew something about it. Yes. The weak-looking youth nodded weakly. However, after a moment, he laughed dryly. But, during the Dark Age, there were a lot of demonic beasts and monsters in the divine world. Unlike these two eras, where they retreated to the extreme plane region, there were basically the same number of humans and demonic beasts in the divine world. In fact, there were even more demonic beasts. In the divine world ruled by demonic beasts, it wasn't rare for a beast tide to destroy a city. Well, I'm just guessing. It's not impossible. Yang Qian nodded. However, he couldn't see anything from the outside. He could only say, let's go in and explore first. There's no point in guessing now. We'll know when we see any clues. The Dark Age. The cities of the Dark Age would record some major events that changed the city on this skyward monument in the center of the city. We can go take a look if it hasn't been destroyed. The weak-looking youth said, I say, third brother, can you not be so nervous every time you speak? Can a real man like you stick out your chest? A youth couldn't help but shout at him. So sorry, everyone, that you're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.